Sup?
Dawn is a waifu.
I'm afraid that that is gay.
It is.
But you know what else is
Sometimes it
gay?
be that way. Homosexuals?
2018.
2018 was pretty gay.
This is the year that I found out that I'm gay.
Congratulations.
This is the year I played Undertale. This is the year I played Life is Gay.
You may actually be gay.
I may be gay.
Have you ever sucked a fart out of a man's bum before?
I have not graduated to that level of homosexuality, I am afraid.
Yes, you got goals to work for. Consider it like a New Year's resolution.
There you go. What is your New Year's resolution?
Hopefully catch up on the enormous amount of video work that didn't get done this year because of all of the insanity that devoured me, especially in the first half, but really all throughout the year overall.
I mean, there's a lot of insanity in the space that we work in, but also a lot of personal insanity, I think, for both of us. So maybe this can be a little bit of a window into that, a little bit of a reflection, and we can review 2018, give it a little score at the end, you know, like all of those games journalists do. They try to put a numerical score on video games instead of just saying whether or not they recommend it.
Yeah, this year was pretty shit. So, how was your year? What have you been doing? I know you had no internet.
Oh, yeah, I forgot
Your
about that.
housing situation was a disaster. You had no power. Like I don't know. It was like insanity.
There was some pretty insane stuff in the middle section of the year. Basically, I started being able to actually support myself, like the minuscule amount of money that I'm actually required to pay. I was able to do that through the internet, through just like doing freelance shit. And so I decided to do that instead because that was way less time consuming than working a real job. And those are gay. So I guess I'm not actually gay because if I were gay, I would still be doing that. But then when my grandmother died in March, we everybody was like panicking about the house because they put it on a reverse mortgage, and apparently nobody found this out until like the week after her death. That there was like a bank actually owned the house, and there's all this other crazy shit. So there's a bunch of stuff that was related to that that I didn't get into, and generally I think that the it was all overblown because like we're still here, obviously, and I guess we're gonna
Yeah.
be here until fucking June or something of 2019 if everything goes well. So I don't know. It's one of those weird things where because I was sort of tangentially aware that once her health had been failing for a while, and I was tangentially aware that once she died, there's gonna be some serious like shit hitting the fan basically because all of the people who are like in the extended family were gonna come up for their pittance from the inheritance or whatever bullshit they were trying to get at. But there was no money left, I guess, at the end of that. So it was all just a sham, a prank. So everybody got pranked on my side of the family, and then we basically just sort of went back to being normal. But we still thought that the house was going to be. I was kept being told by like everybody I interacted with that the house was going to go. We're going to have to find a new place. Blah blah blah. But then nobody was actually doing anything to actually go find new places. And so I was like, is this a real? Like this? It was basically a layered prank. And then after all that silliness, we ended up being in the same spot. So it was like completely a waste of time and completely pointless to worry about it to begin with. Like worry about it enough to go solve the problem, but everybody was catastrophizing and like basically doing the emotional equivalent of like selling their uncle for a free beer. So that's basically where we're at. Everything's fine, no problems, which is really stupid to say at the end of this year. I really thought it was going to be a lot worse, but it's fine. Everything's good. People are just stupid, as is usual. So
Not it's sort of similar here. I guess more severe. Um, obviously, like this is the worst year since 2014. For a variety of reasons. 2014 was obviously like when the cat shit. Like the end of 2013, I almost died to pneumonia. I was like completely incapacitated in bed for like 2 months. and it continued to severely affect my breathing, like to present day. It took like about 8 months to get over it. So that was the end of 2013. And then like the cat shit started up with the chronic ulcers and everything like that. So all of 2014 was consumed by that. And then of course we got evicted in mid 2014 as well. So I had been dealing with cat shit on and on and on and on and on and on. You know, that drained all my life savings, and the housing drained all my life savings. And I really fucked up my knees and my back moving. And then we hit this place, and it's been just steadily going downhill ever since then. My grandmother kicked out her husband because of tarot cards. And then our landlords that we
Is that
had
real?
were,
Sorry, is that
yeah,
real?
it is real. She did an online tarot card reading, and it said one of the cards was death, which was divorce. So that means that she had to boot him out. She decided to just live out that fantasy of booting him out. Now, keep in mind that he was still working at this point, so he was like obviously a large sum of our money.
Right.
So that at that point, like there was like multiple, like even before then, we didn't have hardly any money because we went from $1,000 rent all the way up to like over $2,000 rent, especially with all the utilities. So the rent it doubled because that is how much Canada's rent has inflated since the last place we lived. And this place was considered cheap as well. But our landlords that we had were absolutely insane and incredibly dishonest. So, for example, they went around the block telling all the neighbors that the house was for sale when it wasn't, but they didn't give them contact information or anything like that. So they were just harassing us nonstop, and we had no idea that the house was for sale. It wasn't. It actually wasn't. So there was shit like that going on, another crap going on. Of course, they like used our entire garage for their boat, which a rat thoroughly destroyed. And uh then we come to 2018. And 2018 was just absolute fucking lunacy. So they had a few times they had an appraiser come through because as far as I understand it, the appraiser he tells you how much the house is worth and it affects your mortgage and stuff like that. So, you know, the hypothesis is that every year or so you send an appraiser through and you hope to, because the value of stuff is increasing, you have to pay less on your mortgage. So that's what we were told, is he was just doing that for the mortgage. And of course, a week later, they tell us they're selling the house.
Right.
So, I don't know how it is where you're living in civilized places, but here in Canada, we have such an insane amount of immigration that, uh, even let's say at HKS's place, he was pricing apartments. The waiting list for any individual apartment is over 500 people.
Yeah.
So when it comes to houses, that market is actually just insane. Like in our local news, they've been bitching about the homeless for years and years and years, like especially in Vancouver, which is only an hour away. They bitch about the homeless that they just keep piling up because the fact is that even if you could find a place to live, you can't afford it. It's too insane. Like apartments are like $1,300-$1,500 in most places just for like a single room. If you get any lower, it's probably because it's illegal and it's like in the ghetto or something like that, and it's being run by a drug lord or a gang. So when we were told that the house was being sold, it really wasn't a surprise. Like it was a surprise that it took this long, but it's also like a stage of absolute panic because for one, there's no way we could take, like they've been steadily increasing the rent in this place. Like there's a fixed amount of rent that you can legally increase on your tenants every year. And the contracts are pretty protective of the tenants in that they're, you know, in order to like evict a tenant, you need to have a family member moving in or whatever. Now, we went through this back and forth, and my grandmother is a moron and doesn't know how to understand basic things and doesn't realize that she's more legally protected than it sounds like. In that we can't be evicted just because the landlord sells the house. In fact, our current contract would go over to the new owner. But the thing is most of the people who are looking to buy houses right now are East Indians looking to demolish the houses and rezone so they can build 2 or 3 houses in its lot. So right now we have this massive fad going on where this is like an older town, like 50, 60 years old or so. It was very small, and houses were built with not necessarily spacious yards, but like 20, 30 feet of yard, which is that's too big for East Indians who are looking to really pack things in. Because think of it this way, if you buy a house, like the zone that this house is on right now, just the land is worth over $500,000. This house was priced at $750,000 minimum when they were selling it. I checked it myself, and it's missing roof in the basement. The power is kind of wacky. The outside needed tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of work, a large amount I had to do throughout this year. And, like it needs repairs and fixing and inspection and stuff like that. It's worth almost $1 million. Whereas an equivalent house in Ontario right now, not in the big cities, but sort of like near them, Wybod was telling me he bought, or I think it was his parents sold or bought or something like that. Something for like someone he knew, where he got a hold of a house that was like $200,000. So the prices here are absolutely insane because of all the immigration and the fact that they have money and we don't. So within the first walkthrough, we had an open house walkthrough. There was over 100 people, all East Indians, in under an hour. The real estate man, who happened to be the landlord's brother, of course, because he's the one who advised her to sell. I guarantee it, that they looked at how much they could sell it for, and he was like, hey, you can make close to $1 million right here and now with this house. But most of them didn't actually want to buy the house because it didn't have a kitchen in the basement. So what they like to do is they like to buy and then they subdivide.
Right. Yeah.
And the zone is not actually legally classified for subdivision right now, but that you can get a permit for that too. But the East Indians, they like to pack their house like a clown car. So all the houses around us right now, it's basically an East Indian subdivision, except for a couple of exceptions. And they've got like, minimum of 10 people per household, usually up to 20, some up to 30, and a bunch of them also have trailers illegally parked on their lawn too. And people are living in those as well. So, you think of it, it's pretty smart. The East Indians are very family oriented. They say, this is an expensive house. Maybe we don't really make a lot of money. But if we put 20 people in here and each of them pitch in, it's actually pretty easy to pay.
Right.
So that's their goal. But this house did actually at one point have a kitchen in the basement. It doesn't now, but it did. And I'm going to get into this because 2018 is a long fucking story. You want to go through all of it. This is going to be crazy. This is a wild fucking ride, okay? So the landlord originally was renting the upper level to someone else. And they lived in the basement. The basement has 2 fucking rooms. There's this room that my computer is in. It was obviously like a living room, but it's actually been partially soundproofed. So someone worked on it at some point. And it's big enough for my desk and me. And behind me is a cat tree and a cat litter and some boxes. And that's it. Like it's not a very big room at all. It's like half the size of a normal living room. Then there's the other room next to it, which would have been the bedroom. It's about half the size of that. The bathroom I can hardly fucking fit in. And then there's the utility room where the washer and dryer is. It's big enough to service the washer and dryer, and that's it. They used to have the washer and dryer out in the fucking garage. And then that was their kitchen. So I want to bring this up, not just because the East Indians didn't want to buy it because it didn't have a kitchen in there anymore, but because when they dismantled the kitchen, and like I guess sometime before we moved in, they just left a bunch of big ass fucking holes in the wall underneath the sink. So this is relevant for reasons I'll get into very soon, because we still have another rat. So what actually passes is about a month of last minute illegal appointments. They're supposed to give us a day advance notice that someone wants to see the house. Like
people are just showing up, right? Like,
and people are just showing up within like an hour. They're just like, hey, we're on the way. Make sure the house is ready.
Yeah, that's happened to me so many times in the past like 2 weeks, where people will be like knocking at my door, and mind you, I'm not in like close to the end, like the actual door into the house. I'm just in some tucked away room, and I'm thinking it's like somebody who is like maybe my brother or somebody. So one of my family members is like knocking on the door asking for something, and they'll just it'll be like a real estate agent opening the door. I'm fucking stark ass naked. I'm in my bed, and they're like, what are you doing here? It's supposed to be an open house. I'm like, I'm sleeping. What are you doing here? Like, nobody tells me anything. So I can sympathize with that.
Yeah, it was lunacy. But normally you're supposed to leave for open houses.
Right.
But the real estate guy specifically told us he wanted us to stay there because there is so much rampant theft. Yeah. And he told us, if you are there, it is less likely that people will try to steal. So obviously, we couldn't go anywhere anyways, and we didn't want to leave like the cats here because people in this country actually just kill animals. Like they will just like flat out just kill animals. So I wouldn't trust anybody with our cats, especially the fact our cats can't go outside either. So it's not like I can let them outside or come back or whatever. It's like there's so much danger just for the cats alone, much less all the computer hardware and other kind of like the china my grandmother has and stuff like that. So we had to stay here and basically sit here awkwardly as just an ocean of people came through every single time, and you could tell that the real estate guy was thoroughly drained after each one. Like it must have been exhausting for him because he has to go through each individual. He tries to police them. He has to show them around. He has to tell them all the information about the house, the pricing, take their information or stuff like that. So, but they didn't want to buy. So we just kept going through this. And of course, we have to keep the house clean. And these people don't care about any of the shit they track in or they leave shit in. People were smashing stuff and dropping things all over the fucking place. It was just a wild fucking month. Just a wild fucking month. So, and then they start getting desperate because they just want to sell. So they start asking other real estate agencies to bring in their people and their contacts. And basically, what happens is I think the brother of the current landlord is a real estate agent guy, and he came in. And this is actually the most surreal thing I took from that entire thing is that on many occasions, not just people who were looking at a house, but actual real estate agents came into my room and talked to me, and they said, "You keep your house in fantastic condition."
Yeah, I remember this.
They literally went out of their way to talk to me and tell me how good that the house was being kept and how good of a job we were doing. And I just flat out asked them, "Do people not look after their houses?" And they said, "No, they don't. No, they don't." And when the other landlord, their real estate would come in and do a walkthrough, they'd say, "I've never seen a garage as clean as this. This shit just laying around everywhere. There's a fucking boat in there. It doesn't even belong to us. A rat trashed the place." And I had no idea what kind of houses that they were talking about. But this story goes. I told you the story's long. It gets deeper than that. Because now, at this point, we realize we are not going to have a place to live. So we're going to get a free month. And then that money is going to go towards movers because I'm fucking crippled now. When I moved here, I had to do a lot of the work. And I wasn't exactly in great shape to begin with. I never have been in good shape. I have heart problems. And I had to push myself too much. Lifting and stuff like that, if you do that wrong, you fuck up your knees and your back, and there's no turning back from that. And I fucked up my knees and my back good. And then on top of that, I fell down the stairs multiple occasions and made it worse. And I broke my fucking toe this year too. So I was not in good shape. And I wasn't capable of moving the heavy stuff anyways, and we didn't have a vehicle that could hold the heavy stuff. So we were looking at paying another $2,000 for movers. That's how much they paid overall, I think, in the last year. Or was it $2,000? No, it wasn't 2,000. They paid a huge amount anyways, way more than they should have. But it was going to cost in total probably around $1,000, $2,000 to actually move, and then you had to pay the rent on the next place on top of that. So we were going to need to steal some money. Now keep in mind, amidst this insanity, I've already gone through literally 4 years of nonstop stupidity. Ever since I first got pneumonia, it has just been a cacophony of retardation. Just like the tarot cards, they cracked the engine of a car, because they used water instead of antifreeze. And then they started it up in winter using water instead of antifreeze. And what do you think happens when it's -5 and you've got water instead of antifreeze in your car? You crack the engine on it. So I had to get them a new quote-unquote car. That cost me about $1,500. Oh, it turns out they didn't get the car checked before they bought it, and the car was in a dire need of repairs to run it all with a bent axle, amongst other things, and needed $3,000 worth of repairs that I also had to put. That was the last of my money. So So we were starving and completely tanked all the money we had, deep in debt. They had to do a debt resolution service and other stuff like that, and all this other shit. So like I said, it's long. It is absolutely fucking long. So at the end of it, we were looking, we were gonna have to move again. So, but now we had all these real estate people that were more than willing to do business with us. But the thing is that the real estate's just a middleman. They can't, they can try to like give you early access to houses and stuff like that that aren't on the market, but they're not the ones like setting the prices or controlling. Well, I mean, they control the market by buying and selling, you know, and trying to manipulate it. But the fact is that even if they like you, they can't give you optimal deals. But one of the real estate told us, and they're like, "Hey, we have a house that's not on the market that you could move to, you know, and you could have early access to, but the owner wants to sell it anyways. So it would be like a temporary pit stop. But we were looking at having this yanked out of our feet at any moment now. So we went to have a look at this new house. So this house was priced at $2,600 a month. It was a 2-story. It was similar to this house, a little bit bigger. It had wood flooring, so very, very classy in that regard. I'd never seen houses with wood flooring except with people who had money. So that to me, like my grandmother didn't like wood flooring, but I thought it was kind of neat. But then I actually looked around. So the stove was a very different kind of stove than ours. Um, it didn't have like the circular disc like burners on it. It was a flat stove. Like the whole top of it was completely flat. So it looked like it was a newer stove, but it also looked like that if you turned it on, the whole house would burn down. It had just mounds of caked on burnt shit all over the whole fucking thing. It looked like just something out of a scrap heap that had just been thrown there. The fridge and the windows were all covered in this. Like in here, we have really humid summers, and it makes everything sticky. And the door handles on the walls and everything collect condensation, and it looks really gross. And that it's like living in a fucking tropical forest. But this fridge looked like it had been through 50 summers of that. It was just it looked like nobody had never even so much as touched it. It was just covered in filth, and the windows were covered in filth. And to top it all off, we had to watch where we were standing because half of the tiles in the kitchen were shattered. Dividers in all the floors were removed. And there was an inch to a half inch to sometimes 2 inches of clearance between the floors, meaning if you did not watch where you were moving, you were going to trip and fall and break something, including your toes, and you were going to severely injure yourself and probably stab your toe as well, because it was all just a broken fucking wood separating all the floors, like between bedrooms and the halls and the kitchen and the living room and stuff like that. And then downstairs, there was a kitchen. It was in worse condition than the one up top. There was a pothole in the center of the room. Like my best guess is that there used to be a table mounted to there that had been removed at some point. There was a foot deep pothole, just enough for you to put your foot in and break your foot and your ankle and trip in. Just dead smack right in the middle of the kitchen. So we didn't take that. We were
not looking for the East Indian experience, dude. Come on.
Yeah, we were a little upset that this house was valued at $2,600 a month.
Well, that's just the fucking real estate market at this point, dude. My house is in pretty shit shape. Like I said, you know that time period where I had no internet for like 2.5 months or whatever it was. It might have been a little bit shorter than that. For a much longer period, I didn't have a working toilet. So I had to go to if I had to go to the bathroom, I was like jogging to the gas station that was open 24/7, or if I was lucky and I was awake during the hours of the library, I was jogging to the library, because then I didn't have to buy anything. I could just walk in because it's a public bathroom.
Wow.
So, and okay, so the reason why I'm saying that is not just because it's a humorous story. It's because the property I'm at, even if I think we're getting it sold for $1 million. So that's what we were able to get people to pay for it. Not what it has valued. It's probably valued more than that, and people put the price down because it's zoned for commercial and residential use. So there's a guy who wants to bulldoze the whole area. He's got to put a retaining wall in the back of the property because for the past like 30 years or something, it's just been sliding into our neighbor's backyard because it's just busted. So like the terrain itself is just deconstructing itself slowly, and you need a completely new,
That's what the last house we lived in was like. That
yeah,
house, water was coming in through the fucking floor. There was cracks all over the place. Apparently, before we moved in, like half the archways had collapsed because it's gradually sinking. They have the underground cement stairwell with no drain that you had to hand pump water out of. That was valued at 1.5 million.
yeah. And that shit will happen. I mean, it's more so about the value of the like the zone, the value of the what's the term? It's not the I guess it is the property. It's like the property value has almost nothing to do with the actual house on it. Like if you have a house and it's useful and you can work with it, then obviously that makes your property value go way up. But
Yeah.
the location is way more valuable to the people around here because I live in east coast of the United States where basically everything is like super expensive to live. And so it's like it's sort of comparable, I think, maybe not quite as bad as like the California, like Silicon Valley pricing, where over there it's like, you're paying insane figures yearly to live in like a fucking shack because
Yeah.
just that's the value of the location is what the idea is. It's completely out of control, I think. I think, people need to
It's
fucking get
insane.
themselves checked.
It's government controlled here. The liberal
Wait, how
government
is it
has
government
nursed it.
controlled and still fucked like that? Because here it's like free market or whatever, and people are just fixing prices and shit. But what the
Because
fuck
the
is?
government taxes things. They try to like manipulate how much things are sold for. There's only so many houses that are allowed to be built a year and stuff. So
What?
yep. So they also only so much like I think only so much zoning can be done as well. Like they kind of like watch over it and kind of tell people what they can and can't do. It's worse in Vancouver. I can't imagine it being worse, but I know that we are like near that California levels. There's a few Americans I've talked to have talked about like their apartment situations, and the general gist I've heard is that you can get apartments, they're just really expensive. Here you can't get apartments and they're really expensive. So like the
Nice.
main thing is that the availability here is very very low. So it like realistically speaking, in both cases, there was a good chance we were going to be living in a car for a long time. Like that was actually going to happen. And in this case specifically, that was going to happen. Like they're just simply like this was the only house that like that torn up uh shack that we couldn't afford anyway. There's no way we could afford that. It's $2,600. And the cost to move there, we couldn't have made it. And that was like the only place. So we came home, and this is like it. But uh, to cut the long story short, this guy, where his brother was real estate, he ends up buying it, or he and his other brother ends up buying. I'm not really sure how it works, but they bought it and they had to stay here. But they basically like strong armed us into paying an extra $300 of rent on top of the rent increase that the other landlord had already done. So that was wildly illegal. But they could have just as easily kicked us out. Like
Yeah,
they
like
would
the
find a way to
alternative
do
was
it.
just get out of the house. So
So that $300 was literally the only $300 we had to ourselves. So ever since then, there was a free month. We still got a free month because of the transition of the contract. So I immediately took that money and threw it into an XLR microphone in the front end. But beyond that, I haven't had a dime to my name ever since then. And I'm basically never going. So that was that was devastating. Like it was the best case scenario, but it was still absolutely devastating.
yeah,
At least we didn't have to move and we are on a yearly contract. And that's going to be very, very scary because that's coming up in a couple months. And it's hard to read this guy. I don't think he's a dick, but he is East Indian, and the language barrier makes it hard to really read him. He's a very interesting man. So the legacy of the housing did not end there, um, because he decided he was going to actually do work on the house, unlike the previous landlord. So, for example, in the last couple weeks, a bunch of trees got hacked down, and I basically had to help him clean up the remains. So there was like 10, 11 giant sacks of bricks that I had to haul around and a bunch of other stuff. And my back and my knees have only gotten worse. So I've paid very heavily for that. There was a lot of other yard work and stuff to catch up on. Summer was horrendous. We were consumed in smoke for about 2 months. The heat was the highest it's ever been. We were sitting in the 40s for quite a while. The humidity, of course, was absolutely insane.
When that was going on, you sent me some images of like
Yeah.
what what life was like in Canada at
Yeah.
that point, and that was like some. You had like the Eye of Sauron bearing down on you
Yeah.
or something. It was really
The
sick.
sun was blood red all the
Yeah.
time. If you had your windows open, you were breathing in like burning plastic and shit. Like it put my grandmother in the hospital last year because we had the same thing. And this year was even worse. This was the worst summer I can actually remember. And we don't have air conditioning. We can't afford air conditioning. So the most I've got is some fans. And once you start hitting like 30 Celsius with 100% humidity, the fans don't do anything. Like your skin is fucking melting.
Yeah,
When
they're
you
just
hit
blowing the hot
40,
air
you
around.
are in the fucking shadow realm. Like it is horrible. So that amidst all the work.
Oh yeah, that was
Because
happening while you were doing like yard work and shit. So
yeah.
I assume you were only
It,
conscious for about 3 hours every day.
it was fucking nuts. You can't sleep in it. So I was getting like sleep deprivation and stuff like that. I had so many issues controlling my sleep. But when we were doing the walkthroughs and we had to maintain the house and do all this work and basically redo all the housework every single day, you lose track of your sleeping order. So the insanity with my grandmother doesn't actually end there. There is one major event I skipped over during the housing transition. HKS, who is someone I've known on the internet for quite a long time, and I've known in person as well because he's one of the few people I've ever talked to in person. He was actually going to live here because
Oh,
his
I
folks were
remember
also going through a
this. This
transition.
is an insane story.
So I don't know if I've ever told this story on the podcast. I probably may have hinted at some point, but so he was going. Let me try to remember precisely what happened. So first, they some of his family is living on a farm, and he moved from that to live with his mother and a family friend, I believe. I can't remember where it was. It was a while ago. God, my brain is pudding. It is years. Just like it basically not a week has gone by without insanity. And this to me is like the most surreal thing of it all. I still can't believe this actually happened. Um, but he was going to move here, and let to put things in perspective right now. So we've got my disability. We've got my grandmother's pension. We get some money from her husband still.
Oh
Um,
really?
yep. Because she's, I guess, legally entitled to some money or something like that.
Oh,
Um,
alimony. They actually did go through with like a legal divorce. That's pretty insane. I still can't
no,
believe
no,
it.
they actually haven't divorced yet. She tells people she's separated, but they haven't actually divorced yet. They're still on like good terms, hilariously enough. Um, but I guess she doesn't like want to go through with the divorce because it might like really push things over the edge. But he is living in an apartment now. He doesn't live here anymore. And like in retrospect, it's probably for the better because they never got along. They were always fucking arguing nonstop. But the money situation was bad because we get two pensions, my disability, and two subsidies. Uh, the senior subsidy and then a subsidy for the rent being so high, and we just barely scrape by, just barely. There's still plenty of days you go by without any food. We buy all of our food 75, 90% off because it's expired. So that's primarily how we survive is by buying expired food. Um, obviously, like whenever if the cat was to have a problem right now, like she has a couple scares where she gets a hold of her eye and things get bad. If I had to pay for vet bills, I'm in the deepest, darkest of shit because there is absolutely nothing I can do.
Is the
And
cat situation most? I mean, like I imagine it's an emotional attachment at that point, like
yeah,
because you've had cat problems, like health problems with the cat or
yeah.
several cats for like years on end since probably like
I
before
would not be
2014,
able
right?
to take something happening to the cat. So it's been a horrendous, awful ride. She's stable in the sense that she hasn't done severe damage to her eye in the past 1 year, 1.5 years, but there's been a couple of big scares. She has to wear a cone 24/7, and I have to watch her when she eats. Because if basically what she will do is if she rubs her eye, she'll just rub the cornea right off.
Yeah.
And then you'll get something called a melting ulcer, and that can destroy an eye in under a day. That's actually classified as a medical emergency. The cat, if something like that happens, like to a cat or to a person or anything that you are medically involved with, they are actually supposed to be basically in emergency healthcare, being watched 24/7 by a nurse. But obviously, we couldn't afford that, so I did it for about a month, and that was not the first time I had to watch the cat and give her drugs every hour to every 2 hours. So I got about an hour of sleep a day. So yes, the journey to this point across the past 4 years has been insane. So at this stage with the housing, I was basically mentally and physically destroyed. And then came the part where HAS was going to live here, and he's also on disability, and that would have helped out our money a lot. And he also is more physically capable than I am, so I would have been able to delegate some upkeep to him, and it would have taken a big load off of my shoulders. But
Tarot cards.
uh, I wish it was so simple. It's hard for me to even really get it. None of it is that he moved here. He had to pay about almost $100 in gas for them to move his stuff here. And then immediately on the first day of him being here, him and my grandmother got into a huge argument about the food he brought over. So he has like intolerances to food. I have like a very mild lactose intolerance, and he has like a more severe intolerance. I don't even really know even what it is. But basically, he needs to make sure that he only eats his food. He has his own cooking equipment and stuff like that. Even if somebody else uses this stuff to cook food, he has a severe reaction to it. So he has all this stuff. So our kitchen is not very big, and we had to pile a lot of this stuff in because a chunk
Wait,
of
wait,
it
wait,
was
wait. Is he
perishable.
the guy who eats shrimp flavored ice cream?
No, I've never
Fuck.
shrimp flavored ice. Are you talking? What are you talking about, Vetrius?
Yes.
You
That's
told me
the.
about that before.
Yeah,
I,
well, okay, listen, but after I confused Vitreus for Laconius, I just assumed that everybody eats shrimp flavored ice cream in Canada. It's like a national fucking cuisine. So I guess he just plays
I wouldn't
Minecraft
be
with his wife or
surprised.
something, but.
People play Minecraft.
Listen, the last time I talked to that guy, I thought he was Laconius, and I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm playing Minecraft with my wife." So.
Laconius and a wife. Yeah, that would be a hoot. No, but
At least his bongo impression was pretty good on that one podcast he did.
so they got into a really, like, my grandmother just decided that she was going to be an asshole and wake him up and harass him about his blinds not being open and you having a
He's
light
sleeping. What
on,
is it?
and then started bitching at him about the food. And he was also like really mentally exhausted from all the other like shit he had dealt with prior because there was his own housing situations and stuff like that. And he didn't want to deal with that. And basically he said, "Is this gonna be such a problem? I'll just move out." And Granny's like, "Okay." So in 2 days he was moved out.
Amazing.
So it was like when it was said and done, I had literally moved 2 houses worth of stuff around in that like week, like the half week, with his help, and all the other stuff that I had done. Because this is also when the landlord was coming over to sign the contract
Oh
as
yeah,
well.
you had to like hide him or something, or
So
he had to
we had
not
to
be
like
there.
he was asking about him and like who's this other person and stuff like that because he doesn't know that this other person was there at the time because everything was happening so fucking fast.
Right.
And it was literally down to the wire where we had the Shaw guy in his room trying to hook up the internet and having problems with it because Canada and like people were still delivering stuff into the house of his 5 minutes before the landlord appeared. They
Yeah,
both departed literally within pissing distance of the landlord showing up. So
that's pretty
it
good.
it it
That's
it
like
it,
something out of a bank heist movie or something.
it is. It was like I said, when it was said and done with, I couldn't believe that I had actually gone through that.
Right, and then
Like,
I'll for it to be for naught because then he just leaves.
yeah, he left because they just I don't fucking know, man. I still can't like fully understand it to this day. It was
Didn't he make you French fries or something?
yeah, he had an air fryer. Man, that shit was good. We also have a fryer, but his cooked in like half the time and better. It was great. We sat there, had fries, and watched Alex Jones videos because there was literally like nothing else we could do in that awkward silence. Where my grandmother was like just shit talking him to me, like behind his back, but he could fucking hear her across the house because his house doesn't have any insulation anywhere else. And it's
Well,
like I have been in socially awkward situations before. I'm not exactly a socially adept person, but nothing in my life had made me feel as uncomfortable as this situation. It was just so fucking surreal. And then the rest of the year was just insanity. My grandmother had her bank account hacked and attacked by Uganda or something because she hands out her information freely to websites because people aren't going to lie on the internet. They can't be dishonest. The cops will get them. Yeah. And then the social insurance declared her as dead and started shutting down all of her services out of the blue.
yeah, that
And
was its own wild ride.
yep, that was insanity. The pensions got delayed for half a month on billing day, so that was great. And in recent times, just a few days before Christmas, we discovered her license had actually been canceled a few weeks ago
And this is
because
all
anybody
related, right? Because of the
no,
guy who
that's
somebody.
all unrelated.
Oh,
This is because once you reach a certain age, you have to perform a medical exam to show that you are fit to drive.
oh, okay.
But they never sent us any notice for this because they had been sending everything to the wrong mail this entire time. The wrong postal code, wrong address, wrong everything. So we suddenly get a message from November 29th, today,
So it's just a
that
clerical
says
error on their part. It wasn't to like an old address that you guys had.
it was their error. This is all their shit. They considered her dead because, and I quote, they got an email. Some nondescript email was enough to declare someone dead on social assurance. And the amount of work it had to go through, she had to provide all kinds of fucking information to prove that she was still alive. Just identity wasn't enough. She needed to dig up like marriage records. Just to prove that she was still alive, and they told us an email was sufficient to get her to be declared dead.
Yeah, that's all they need.
And then they told us this has been happening a lot lately. And then someone in fucking Calgary told me that happened to someone in the news. And I'm just... So now she technically doesn't have a driver's license and has to pay about $150 to get this medical exam and try to get a new license. And we just don't even know if she's even going to be able to get it. So...
Canadians.
And then there's this rat. So you remember when we started
more Canadians?
this big old rat, when I told you about these holes underneath the sink? So a rat that, if I measure its poo, is probably about 3 or 4 times the size of the rat we had that trashed the boat and everything else and left a huge mess everywhere. We have a rat that's gargantuan in fucking size that is just freely walking in and out of the house, destroying anything it finds. It's been gradually chiseling away at the wall in the garage, pulling out fistfuls of fucking insulation every day. And initially, the landlord was like, "Oh, there's a rat. Okay. Well, I guess we'll throw in some traps and some poison." So they get mouse traps. And I researched rats a lot the first time around we had a rat to try to see how you deal with them. The most ideal way to deal with them is apparently an electric trap. But the thing about rats is they're a lot bigger than mice. So if you use like a mouse trap to try to kill a rat, it's not going to work. The rats are gargantuan in size compared to a rat.
Yeah, they'll just snap the trap in half, probably.
Yeah. So they get little tiny mouse traps and some poison for that takes, and I think it was 8 days of exclusively eating the poison to kill a rat. Well, the rat wasn't living inside. This rat wasn't living inside the house. He's coming in from somewhere outside, and I have no fucking idea where. And there's these holes underneath the sink that he's coming in. A huge fucking rat at any point could come inside the actual house and be trapped inside the actual house and just start destroying everything inside the actual house.
Well, you really don't
My
want to use
rat,
poison on that stuff, anyways, because then they just even if it does work, they just die inside your house, and then you just attract
yes,
more pests. So like, what?
yeah.
They're really stupid.
Or, like the worst case that really scares me is the rat gets in the house, eats poison, and then the cats find it when I'm asleep and they eat a rat filled with poison, and then they also die. So that is very, very scary. So I really don't think they put in poison in. But as far as I can tell, the rat's never gotten inside the house. But past that, they haven't done shit. It's been months, and the rat just keeps coming and keeps tearing open holes bigger and bigger and bigger. It's just ignoring the traps, ignoring the poison. And he said, "Oh, we'll fill those holes with cement," and then does nothing.
Well, your waifu Dawn says that he used sticky traps, so maybe you can try those.
Yeah, so we got sticky traps, and the rat has definitely gotten stuck on those, and it just threw them all over the fucking room, and then left. Like they're scattered every which fucking way. Like there's gotta be like a dozen of those fuckers all over the place, and they just get like there's one like literally like 5 feet from where I put it. So he's definitely gotten something stuck on it, and then just
Just
because he's
thrashes
a
around.
fucking rat
Yeah.
and not a mouse, he just keeps going with it, and it just gets stuck on something else.
I just
So
the way that you phrased that, I imagine he just walks in, scoops them all up, and fucking throws them around the room and then leaves.
yeah, well, I put him in front of like the holes and in corners and stuff that he goes to, and these definitely gotten stuck on them, but they're like sticky traps for rat or for mice. Like they're not very big. They're like 4 or 5 inches across, and if this rat is as big as I think it is so big that those traps are not going to hold it in place at all. It's just going to take it with them. So I'm pretty sure that's what's been happening. And also the most hilarious thing about this rat is, but when we initially got the landlord here, he got a bunch of spicy stuff. He called it spicy from one of his neighbors. And if an East Indian calls something spicy, you damn well know it's going to be spicy because they live on spicy
Oh, I
food.
thought this was related to the, like he was saying you should feed this to the rat or something.
Yes, that was the
Oh,
idea.
really?
The idea is that rats don't like spicy shit and mice don't like spicy shit. So if you put all this spicy crap around the holes, they're going to go there. It's going to get in their eyes. It's going to get in their nose. It's going to sting like fuck. They're not going to want anything to do with it. You want to know what this fucker rat did?
Ate it all?
It basically ate all of the spicy shit and moved it to another hole. At one point, I noticed all the spicy shit was disappearing. And I looked around the garage and I found it all piled back behind a place that was trying to block a hole. The rat was actually moving all of the spice, like with its mouth, because that's the only really way they could do it. So when I told the landlord that, he just laughed and shook his head. It was like, it's insanity. And then this rat is apparently going to like every house in the fucking neighborhood and just trashing their shit. And I just don't know how nobody's killed the fucking thing yet.
He's like a serial killer at large or something. It's pretty sick.
It's like a fucking sitcom. So yes, 2018 has been a fucking train. Oh,
Well,
shit.
there's no brakes on this train.
So hopefully he doesn't try to raise the rent again. But
Just tell
I
have
don't
him
I
put a
don't know what his
bounty,
plan
like
is.
a $1,000 bounty on the rat. When you kill it, you can just get a couple bucks off your rent.
Like a Wild West, except for
Yeah.
rats.
Fucking poster. Wanted. Todd or Dad. Well, so that was your year then. That was 2018
That
for you.
that was a part of it, anyways. That's the short form version of it.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you sum up a year, there's always going to be shit that you miss necessarily because of the way that it's a year, and you're trying to sum it up in like a 2.5 hour episode or whatever. But it's quite the experience, man. Between all that stuff, I think we both. You said that you were. This is like the most productive you've been video content wise in terms of what you've produced, but not necessarily what you've released, or was it both?
Mm-hmm. So let's see here. I may as well start from the top. So at the end of last year, we started looking at because I was going to start a Skyrim run. I was doing a Divinity Original Sin 2 run, and these videos were turning up really huge in my encodes. So there's another guy I talked to, a Swedish man, who does a lot of research for audio and did a lot of research for videos and stuff like that.
Usually while drunk.
Yep, well drunk, most certainly, and high. And so we went back and forth with a lot of this stuff, and I initially did a lot of research on rescaling algorithms to half size the videos. So there's initially on my releases, the only half size video I had or downscaled video was Hunted, and I would discover I actually rescaled that incorrectly, which is why it's crushed. So I did something very, really stupid there. You can't override the aspect ratio with the player to fix it, but the encode is smashed, and that's really bad. So I wanted to avoid all that, but also when I was rescaling stuff normally with a default algorithm in AVI synth, I was ending up with blurry video. And I did some tests for Skyrim and forwarded it to people who I knew I was going to be viewing it. And one of them was telling me that she felt motion sickness watching it. So this sort of stuff, like this was just like the absolute like tip of the penis. It eventually took us into a wild, wacky ride that even to this day is just this huge onslaught of researching video encoding. Because basically, video encoding is entirely undocumented. There is so much basic shit when you encode videos that you don't know about, unless you are very technically versed in video production, that really slaps you upside the face. So, amongst them is TV color range. So you'll probably notice that YouTube and other crappy services like that, they can't handle darks at all. Anything that's supposed to be a 00 black gets pushed up to like 16. That's because they're using a standard from like 1970 for cable TV. So cable TV, the cable signal, it crushes to, I think it was 16 to 35 instead of 0 to 55, because those other parts of the signal were used for other data. I'm not really versed in the nitty gritty of it, but that's effectively what those analog restrictions were from. So when he entered the digital age, that no longer was necessary. But for some reason, YouTube and similar garbage services still use those as the standard. A part of the reason is probably because most of these encoders actually default to those kinds of settings. To actually get full range color out of a lot of stuff, it's not even possible. And in the things that do support full range color, you usually have to manually define it. So, given the fact that the extreme vast majority of people out there who make videos, and pretty much every single person who makes mainstream videos, doesn't know the first fucking thing about encoding videos, they probably don't even realize that this is happening. But there's more to it than just that. So, we went through a long list of discovering all kinds of fucked ass shit. And this amounts to hours and hours and hours and hours of encoding and pixel by pixel verification and really like learning how to analyze this stuff. Because the short of it is that the thing about encoding, especially with X264, is it's not about the literal quality of the frames, like not just like how the colors and stuff are. Those are literal quality, your color depth and stuff, but also how the compression is handled. You get to something called psychovisuals. So a big theme about compression is it's supposed to appear high quality when it really isn't. So if you've ever paused a frame on any of my videos that are very heavily compressed, the actual frame will usually look like a vomity piece of shit. But the video in itself will actually look usually pretty good while it's running. But they're actually not that accurate. And the thing is that there's actually several different forms of compression going on in videos that nobody tells you about. So one of them is called chroma subsampling. So a way to summarize chroma subsampling is when you view a video on YouTube, the colors are actually at half resolution, I think, or a fourth resolution. So chroma subsampling is actually a alternate form of compression for color. And it is basically reducing color information in your videos. So my old World of Warcraft videos, the most of the ones are currently available, they're not using the correct chroma subsampling. If you compare those to a screenshot, a lot of things are going to be off. Not just because the color range was off, but because the chroma subsampling is actually deleting information and then averaging between deleted information. So the text is all the wrong color. The red text for unit names and stuff like that, that gets almost completely lost in the videos. And I never really understood that. I thought it was just a weakness of X264. It is actually because of chroma subsampling. So there was an article I read that claimed that chroma subsampling is very necessary for compression, but disabling it increased the video size by 60 megabytes in a 1.5 gigabyte video. So basically nothing at all.
Yeah, it's like a
And,
1% variance or something
and
less
the
than that.
visual quality was fucking insane how much it improved. I posted a bunch of comparison screenshots. I think I showed you guys those a while ago. World of Warcraft comparison frames actually completely fucking change. Like objects actually change in their position because it's compressing the color range. It's actually averaging between pixels by reducing the resolution, which means psychovisually objects are actually fucking moving around. And the thing is, when you crush the color range and then you crush the resolution through chroma subsampling, That's the information that's getting passed to the encoder. And it's the encoder's job to compress the video. So you're actually handing the encoder incorrect information for your scene altogether. Now, the thing about crushing TV range and full range is MPC and stuff like that, they actually expand it back upwards. Like they usually expand it back upwards. So you get a conversion back up. So there's also YUV and RGB. Those conversions are generally lossless. But these videos are being compressed to a limited range YUV with chroma subsampling. What this means is that if you extract a frame out of your video that is not going through the post-processing of your player, you're going to find that the image colors are actually really ballooned out, because that's what YUV looks like. That's the information getting handed to your encoder, which means that it's actually allocating information very, very suboptimally. So the layman's way of seeing it is those flat colors that should be like gradients or whatever, there's a reason why they turn into like 1 or 2 shades of color, because that's what the actual frame looks like after it's gone through the TV range compression and then the chroma subsampling. And then the encoder compresses that instead of what you yourself are actually seeing after your player upscales it. So it's like saving a JPEG 5 times over. Like that, like there is multiple levels of fucking compression going on. So if you compare, for example, my I think I may have released a WoW video with high 444. I'm not sure, but say for example, even that Doom run, or the later half of Kingdom Hearts versus the early half. It is a fucking world of difference. The compression is more accurate. The quality is better. The motion sickness is gone. You know, stuff like that. The Skyrim videos I have downscaled. I downscaled them with something called Spline 64. It's far more efficient than Lanxos, and it doesn't blur it, and it doesn't have any of the artifacting. So, just between that research alone, we have like pulled so much power out of X264 that we didn't even know was even there. Because if you read about this stuff, you just get misinformation everywhere. It's hard to find real accurate real world, and then with comparisons, information about color spaces like Rec 709, recommended 709, BT 709, full range, limited range. Like a lot of people just only recommend for YouTube, and YouTube defaults to lowest possible quality settings. There's a reason why YouTube looks like shit. It's not just because it's allocating such little information, it's because it's crushing the colors and everything on top of it. So it, like that alone was a lot of work.
It's also worth noting that like Netflix, Twitch, all of these other services have the same encoding settings as far as I can see. Like I've watched so many quote unquote HD Netflix episodes of whatever TV show, and if you just pause at a moment where there's any supposedly black pixels on the screen, they're like a muddy pixelated mess where it looks artifacted as fuck. So like this is stuff that's, I mean, obviously in motion it can be worse, and often is, if you're paying attention to it at all. It's one of those things where once you see it, it just ruins the whole experience for you because you'll never unsee it. It's one of those
when I did my first
issues.
test for ICO, you have those typical logos where it's black and then there's text. I would actually see, like when it's compressed, I would actually see bands of colored pixels expand outwards from the logo. Those don't exist in the source footage. They didn't exist at all. But the encoder was handing you a crushed ass image. And then it was a TV range image, and the encoder didn't know what to do with it. And so you got this absolutely insane artifacting of like colors crawling across the screen off of what should have been at least only 16, 16, 16, the TV range. But the encoder didn't know how to fucking handle this information. And it was just fighting it in this weird way. It just didn't know what to do. But then you think about shit like Netflix and crap. People pay for that. You guys are paying for low quality JPEGs. Like that's what you're paying for.
Yeah, I mean, one of the main issues is that if you want that content at all, you're stuck with that. I mean, people are not even releasing like quote unquote Blu-ray releases or whatever, where they're not releasing a direct
high quality video.
Yeah, but they're not even releasing it as like a product that you can purchase in like a real physical product. It's all digital. It's all through these streaming platforms. So you're never going to get a real real image, unfortunately. So it's kind of like I understand why it's almost like you know how there's like that price fixing phenomenon, especially with ISPs is like a common example that people always throw up. It's almost like a quality fixing phenomenon here. Instead of fixing the price, they're just saying, well, if we all are just incompetent, then they'll have no other choice. And I mean, it's a situation where I don't know if it's actually that enforced at any respect, but if somebody came out with an alternative that was actually superior, that was stream even of streaming service or whatever, or direct download service, but actually offered you properly encoded content. Although I'm dubious as to whether or not it would even be possible, because a lot of the times the source content that they're being provided is fucked. So it's not even really an issue of the provider. But if somehow you're able to wrangle that, I think you would be able to enter into the space where otherwise it's like market dominance from these giants like Netflix, YouTube, etc. But I don't know.
Well, the YouTube, I'll get in the YouTube thing in a moment because lots of insane stuff has happened there too. But the thing is you need the source to already be at a high quality. It's like having music. So plenty of people upload FLACs that are just MP3s. So all you have is just an extremely large MP3. Yeah. So if you're going to encode this high quality video, you have to have the source at there. You have to have the lossless source. So this was the time where I actually switched from Fraps to OBS, because Fraps can't record I444 video. It can't record something without chroma subsampling. So OBS could, but it was bugged. You actually had to modify it and fix it in the source code. All you had to do was actually just delete something that was in there. Just like comment out or delete some piece because they just fucked it up on their own. And it was a bug that had been reported like years ago that they never fixed. So HKS had to go in there and actually fix the source code for this, and then do a very specific setup, and I'm actually able to record that. So now I can record at I444, and you can't open those videos in Vegas or edit them. So that's a drawback. But you can actually convert them near losslessly with FFmpeg anyways. You'll be chroma subsampled again, but it'll still be better than going through all the, like, once you've done your color corrections and stuff like that, then it isn't so big of an issue. But like the main problem with this stuff is it's not common knowledge. Even though like when you save a JPEG in Photoshop, it usually asks you your quality. Like, what do you want? Quality 1, quality 10, whatever. Yeah. If you go into Photoshop and look at your image and you see the color, there's like a color setting for, like, 256 colors, paleted colors, true color, 32-bit, whatever. That's super basic shit, right? Like, everybody gets what that is. That's literally what this stuff for videos is. It's literally the exact same fucking thing. Super basic options. But I guarantee you that 90% of the people hearing this have never fucking heard of any of it. Because this super basic information is not right in your face. People just assume you want your image to be crushed to TV range and half of its color is fucking removed. People just assume that's what people want, so nobody asks a question because the information's never fucking exposed to you to begin with. And then on top of it, if you go Googling for this stuff, you're going to find a fuck ton of misinformation. These color matrices, Rec 709, BT 709, are literally in most texts the exact same fucking thing. But each different encoder has a different way of handling them. AVI synth, Rec 709, is actually crushed. You want BT 709 or PC 709. Even though, and I looked at the technical documentation because Rec 709 stands for recommended 709. There still isn't a clear-cut example that says this is what this does, this is what that does, and this is why this does what that does. They don't fucking just lay out in plain fucking English, even though video production has now become one of the biggest fucking things on the internet now. Now everybody fucking makes videos. Everybody fucking uploads to YouTube and Twitch and shit like that. And literally none of them know what the fuck they're doing. Literally none of them realize that they're actually destroying their video. And furthermore, a lot of them don't even fucking care. There's people who use YouTube to listen to music. So now YouTube is like, we can't let people listen to music. They'll just stop playing videos for you instead. Yeah. And like the people don't give a fuck about audio quality because they're being fed like a 196 fucking MP3 that's masqueraded as an AAC file and sounds like absolute fucking garbage. And they don't care. Like, I've asked people why they do this. It's just, because it's on YouTube, I can access it. But You can access a WAV file or a FLAC or even just a Q10 OGG so much easier and not have to deal with YouTube destroying your bandwidth, shredding your hard drive with its inefficient streaming functions, flooding you with ads that can contain malware and eating your bandwidth. Like, and it'll sound so much better even on shitty hardware. So of course nobody gives a fuck about your videos actually being accurate or anything like that. So even if you explain this to people, they're not going to give a fuck. So it's idiocracy. It's just absolute absurdity everywhere. So yeah, a large chunk of this year was devoted to researching that stuff, testing out, making sure it is actually worth it. Really like unit testing every individual change. I switched from MegUI to FFmpeg, and we were recently fucking around with PSOI RAD. I can't remember that SciRad. I think it was like Cycle Radius or something related to how it handles sharpening and smoothing and stuff like that. And just trying to actually understand how to get the most accurate image with the least amount of size increases and stuff like that. And but I've done a lot of recording this year. I've done a lot of processing this year. There's the World of Warcraft series. There's, I think, around 24 videos currently released for that. There's a lot more to record, but I haven't done any recording because things just got really awful in summer and I stopped. But I'll probably try to pick that up in January again. I probably have about 300, 400 hours of video to edit that I've started to tackle through time. I've released lots of D&D recordings. I've made lots of D&D maps. Despite all the stuff that's been going on, I've actually been really busy with stuff. A lot of it just like I don't release it until it's finished, and it's like Herculean tasks left or right, so they don't really get released. Only the World of Warcraft stuff is the exception. So, but I'm hoping 2019 nothing goes to shit any more than it has, and we can actually start releasing some of that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was trying times, obviously, with all of the various shit that occurred as a result of like the housing crisis. It's kind of weird that we both had housing crises in like the same year, around the same time. I'm pretty sure too. It was pretty. Yeah. I think it was very serendipitous in that respect. Very strange.
Yeah, it's definitely messed up.
So I think it just proves once and for all that the world is a simulation. I've actually been documenting the yearly productions that I was able to go through and all the different custom campaigns and games that I played, and I gotta say, playing all this custom content on my end, I can see why one such as yourself, who is already at the boiling point, perhaps mentally, would not try to play these things. As I just looked back and saw that it took me 3 months to beat Flame Knives. So there's some little trivia for you. Started in March, ended in May. That's pretty sad.
I handled about 5 minutes of Flame Knives before I had too much.
Yeah.
And I started the game, and then my heroes died to nothing. There was nothing, and I was like, well, this is...
Well, yeah, and then you restart. Well, remember, okay, I actually wanted to get your opinion. This is like sort of unrelated, but I guess you could tie it into a larger conversation about like developmental standards. Because one of the things that I did in 2018 was I released the StarCraft remastered version of Project Hydra, and it was like verifying something that I basically already knew, that remastered was an awful platform for custom content, but it's also like forcing myself to work in like weird limitations and. Mostly for the purpose of like figuring out what AI actually needed to operate as functionally to the point that I wanted it to. And so, eventually I went back to 161 towards the end of the year. But releasing that taught me a lot of lessons. It allowed me to explore a lot of like designs of RTS and just gameplay in general. One of the things that I was thinking about is I feel like saving is almost like saving in the middle of a game is almost tantamount to a cheat for RTS. Like it feels like a cheat to me. And so when you get these micro campaigns, I always forget to save. It's not necessarily that I'm deliberately not saving, because I recognize that it's a micro map. It's an abstraction on the traditional RTS formula, so it's not actually going to be real gameplay most of the time. Even if it's a good micro mission, whatever those are, you still have the situation where you're dealing with like something that's very different than an RTS game. So the same rules shouldn't apply. We're saving in the middle of an RTS. I feel like I frown upon that practice myself. I feel like instead, if I'm defeated, I should replay from the beginning or whatever. Although obviously I'm not necessarily saying that other people shouldn't. It's just that's been like my gut reflex. So I always get frustrated when I'm playing a micro mission. I forget to fucking save, or some other gimmick mission where it's not a real RTS, even if you are, engaging with it in a macro sense. There's a custom campaign I'm in the middle of playing, War of the Tribes by Gabriel Sorrell, and it was made in 1999, and it was famous for having really awful portraits. And the one of the missions, you're it's technically a macro mission, but you start out, your whole base is on fire. All of your Marines are not in their bunkers, and they just spawn in like, 300, 400 supply of units over the time span of like 10 minutes. And you're expected to, it's like in a set pattern, it's never random. It's always the same thing. So it just becomes a solvable puzzle of like trial and error. And something like that, you probably should be saving and loading just to save yourself some fucking headaches. But I still would always forget that. What's your opinion on saving in RTS and that sort of shit?
Well, the thing is all these custom campaigns basically amount to QuickTime events. So saving is irrelevant for them because it's always going to be the same thing that happens because it's just a bunch of stuff happens at X, Y. So you don't gain anything about playing through that content a second time because it isn't even content. Things that use timed waves and timed triggers and have units standing here and there, since you don't actually do anything to engage with those mentally besides, perform a quick time event, there is nothing you lose by skipping it by loading. But at the conceptual level, with like something that's dynamic, like having an AI and stuff like that, uh, saving bypasses potential interactions that could have come as a result of engaging it a second time, presuming that the AI is designed to act in some sort of randomized variable, like, for example, attacking you from different angles, or maybe changing up its composition, or maybe if you took that expansion or this or that or something like that. Saving is really something that I think I may have talked a bit about to some extent in R-Type 3, actually, because most shmups follow that, since they're from arcades, they have the coins. The coins give you a fixed number of continues, and you can just feed them uh, coins. Like that's the whole shtick for making money off of it, to continue or whatever. But like the goal of the shmups is generally to go through them with 1 CC and then work on your highest score and stuff like that. So 1 CC means 1 credit. But R-Type 3 lets you, at least on the SNES or whatever, it lets you just keep continuing. And the save points are usually pretty favorable, like putting you in front of the boss or stuff like that. So I hadn't played a shmup in like close to 25 years or something like that since I started, uh, or since before I did R-Type 3. And it took me about 7.5 hours across 2 or 3 settings to go through it, and I had accrued like some hundreds of deaths, and that would have been significantly worse if that save system didn't exist. So it really made me wonder, like, at that stage, since it is a fixed system, but it's very execution oriented and it's very dependent on what you do. Uh, at what point do you consider save points good? So save points are good when they allow you to bypass arbitrated content. So say for example, these ARPGs all have this annoying shit where their save points for like bosses or fights or stuff are behind things like platforms or QTEs or other like dumb mundane shit that doesn't actually contribute to the game. Like it's not you overcoming a boss or learning mechanics. It's you literally just performing a series of actions and basically sitting behind a time gate before you can reattempt whatever it is you're having problems with. So in all those cases, obviously you should remove this stuff that constitutes as something that isn't an engaging element to begin with. But in all the examples you've had to deal with, I don't think that saves are necessarily bad because it's helping you bypass shit that doesn't actually engage you anyways. None of these fucking custom campaigns even try to have an AI, and the micro missions aren't anything. I have yet to see a micro mission made by any of these people that is even remotely compelling at all. I mean, like, even just fucking Legacy of the Void is literally just, it tells you what to do here and there. And, like, even if you're fucking blind, as long as you're being told what to do, you'll just do it and then you'll win. So, like, at that point, the save button may as well just be a proceed to next mission button because that's all you're actually really doing is you're just sitting behind a fucking time gate with a fucking Simon Says on it that says, do this, do that, do this, do that. Now proceed to the next, do this, do that, this, do that. Now proceed to the next. It's like being in fucking class or something like that in kindergarten or something. Like you're just treated like this fucking brainless schmuck who can't even remotely think for yourself, can't figure out what your own fucking buttons do. Like you're handed a mouse and a keyboard, but you said, no, you can't push anything but this button. Push that button, you win the game. Here's your reward. Here's your achievement. Now go push the next button. It's actually insulting. But if, for example, in the campaign that I was going to build, I would not have save points automated or otherwise because it's an RTS map. Now, what happens when you're playing against Todd and, Todd wins his match? You go on to the next match. It's like a best of 5, right? So you go on to the next match. You don't just like rewind the game to some point where Todd hadn't dropped your expansion and then go move in some melisks to stop his drop like that. That is actually tantamount to cheating in an actual game, right? Like in a competitive game, you don't do stuff like that. So why would a single player game attempting to replicate that environment be any different? It wouldn't be. So yeah, in that context, it is most certainly constituting as a cheat.
Yeah, so that's sort of what I thought. I mean, people had a lot of the people that I was talking to about this particular issue, they sort of had the same reaction to me thinking about disabling or somehow limiting saves, the same way that they had a reaction to me outright removing cheats from the game, which is what I've been doing since. Well, obviously, like Hydra Rebel Yell didn't really have the ability to do that in remastered, but or maybe it does, but I didn't bother investigating it. But for all the 161 projects I have, with the exception of my brother's birthday project, which is literally designed for like a 14-year-old, is the cheats are out. So because the cheats are out of the window, obviously that means you actually have to win in order to. Like, you have to be competent enough. There is like some sort of skill test, a skill requirement in the mission. Each mission is its own level of skill check that bars you from progressing until you're skilled enough to do so. And I don't really think that that's a bad thing. The issue is a lot of people are accustomed to these campaigns being really easy, or even if they're difficult, it's more so arduous than actually difficult. It's like Dark Souls, where it's just, wasting your time almost. It feels like you're grinding in World of Warcraft or something, and you're just waiting for your
If you die to something
to
that's
win.
out of your control and it becomes frustrating, you compound that frustration by, forcing them to redo a bunch of shit to get to them.
Yeah. So, I mean, with those, the way that you broke it down, I think is pretty useful for developers anyways, because you're talking about it in the sense that the interactions that the players are having are not actually useful, they're not engaging, and these interactions are actually mostly hostile to them in the sense that they are, if you were not to be, reloading a save from, or a checkpoint or something that was minutes before the death that was completely out of their control, then obviously that would be really miserable for players who, that it wasn't their fault that they died. Literally was not their fault. So they can actually blame the game in this case, and now they've got to go redo work, not because of their own lack of skill, not because they failed to, they expressed a lack of skill as opposed to the possession of skill. They actually were in a position where the game took advantage of them, and they now have to redo work. They have to. That's where it becomes a grind, I think, even in a case where there is no conventional grinding in the game's mechanics. So something like in these Flame Knives-esque campaigns and all this other shit is like, if it's out of my control, if I can't interact with it, like think the Heart of the Swarm mission where you're defending that chrysalis. It's a whole 30-minute holdout mission or whatever, and the enemies are just spawning in on the map. Like, you have no real way to engage with them. The only way you can engage with them is attacking the enemies themselves, but you can't engage with their spawn points, you can't engage with their economy. Meanwhile, they're doing all of that to you. They're attacking your production, they're attacking your expansions because of the way that they're spawned in. And the only objective there besides that is just to go kill a fucking dinosaur on the other side of the map, which is really silly. So don't put dinosaurs in your maps, I guess, is the moral of that story.
Don't put trees in your maps either.
Oh, fuck, dude. So actually, this is the year that, for one, this podcast came into existence. I thought it was a little bit more recent, but actually we started it in March, so early March of 2018. I can't believe it's been that long, but I guess we did go for like a 2.5 month period without doing it because I had no internet. So
yeah.
But outside of that, I mean, we did that. We did 2 separate co-cast productions together, which was pretty cool. We did Antioch episode 3, which was a treesaster, and we did fucking StarCraft 2: Legacy of the Void. I honestly don't know which one is worse. What's your verdict on that?
That's a really tough one.
See, the thing is, this podcast was originally going to be like, oh yeah, we'll do StarCraft 2 in review, but then we dilly-dallied. Both of us were unavailable, and so the only time we could do a podcast is now, 2 days before the end of the year. We figure we'd just get everything in one go. But certainly StarCraft 2 deserves a shout-out at this point for providing us with not only the most memorable custom campaign I've played, but also the most retarded released product I've played in a while. I can't really say that because I did play Undertale again, but you know, you get the idea.
I think that Legacy of the Void is worse because they tried to take it seriously, but I think it's pretty evident with Antioch Episode 3 that nobody at any point took it seriously. I mean, I guess I took it seriously when I did voice acting and did some graphics for them. I was pretty
Well,
serious about at least
I'll
learning
push
little
back
bits and
on that.
ends. But
I'm gonna push back on that. I think they took it seriously. The problem is like your definition of what taking it seriously means is like includes being competent or attempting to be competent at your job.
yeah, at
Whereas
least trying to learn.
these people are not necessarily about that life. What they're trying to do is tell a deep story that is multicultural and diverse and not colonial. So like they took that part seriously insofar as they made sweeping changes to the game seemingly
I think
last
that's just
minute.
a result of them being insane, though.
Yeah.
Like I don't think it's
They
necessarily
took their insanity
like, they took
seriously.
it seriously. I think it's literally that they're just actually insane. Because to them it was probably like a really casual decision, despite the implications to the workload.
I don't want to
I think
think
it was a
about
really
that.
casual decision where they just like
No.
had some gut reflex, like this is too colonial, let's change this, and they didn't really actually think it through. And whereas Blizzard like invested money into this and hired voice actors with history behind them and are working on a franchise that had multiple installations, and like you couldn't like not really approach it with some degree of seriousness. Whereas Antioch 3, I think that if anybody like especially through their technical labor actually like paid attention to what they were doing and paid attention to the game, would have at least spoken up to that voice in their head and said there's something wrong here. There's something wrong. Like I think it's actually like physically impossible for a sentient creature to not look at that tree cinematic and think that there's something a little wrong, especially given that the context of the campaign was not to be humorous. It wasn't like a Bob levels kind of thing. It was something trying to be somewhat serious in context, and like, but they just throw that out the window immediately and willfully. So it's hard to really like visualize them as taking it seriously. I mean, maybe I'm wrong and they did treat it seriously. Upon which case, I feel like that insanity is just like multiple colors of insanity.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're comparing one pile of shit to another. Either way, if it was a serious decision born of a lot of thinking and contemplation, that's almost worse. Or at the very least, it's not really all that better than it just being the product of insanity. It was the product of insanity, though. I'd hit a fucking tree, kill a dog or something.
Like, oh, okay, I understand you want to be colonial and not British or something, but the tree sliding around and the stuff sliding around is like the most basic fucking shit to fix. It takes you less than a minute to tune that out. It's just, adjusting some values at the absolute tops. And the colors and the lighting and the triggers and the performance is all very basic stuff that could all be fixed. Like the whole campaign could basically be fixed in a day or two, at least by somebody who's at least familiar with their structure of data. But maybe like 2 or 3 days for somebody who wasn't familiar. Probably they can just walk in and change around the lighting values and go into the Cinemax editor or triggers or whatever and adjust some movement values and then suddenly it's goofy. It's still going to be goofy, but now it's a little more polished and no effort was made to that end. So they obviously, they wanted to tell you, the player, that they don't actually care about the quality or the polish or anything. They were literally saying, we just don't give a shit. We don't fucking care. And I've just been seeing like echoes of this in Skyrim, where we have these unit spawning mods, spawn extra monsters. Very basic concept. Well, they just literally spawn them right on top of you, and even when you turn off the option to spawn near the player, they still just spawn right on top of you. So I've just countless deaths to like oceans of Draugr and stuff, literally spawning directly on me and hitting me before I can even do anything. So there's like countless instances of that, and then there's like the armor conversions and stuff like that, where like the arms are crushed and the proportions are messed up. You convert for one body type, and then everything is clipping like fuck. And the only reason why is because they didn't actually bother to do it correctly. And then there's like seams and fucking busted ass geometry and UV stretch, like shit you just see right just looking at it casually as a player. So obviously they would have seen it too if they were actually paying attention and looking at it while they were making it, but they didn't care. People just don't care. They just want their endorsements and their likes, and they want to be followed on Patreon and Twitter, and that's their get up, not about actually producing a high quality project. So in that sense, I can't ever visualize these people ever actually being serious. They're just, the fucking dime a dozen greedy fucks who think they're going to get out of something out of identifying as custom content developers. To me, those kinds of people aren't even people. They're just marketers.
Well, I guess I can't argue with that now, can I? I'm so shocked at still shocked at a lot of the stuff that I saw in Antioch 3. I guess I'm probably a bit more desensitized to the Legacy of the Void stuff. Like, looking at it, if you're trying to draw a verdict between the two, I think obviously the StarCraft 2 stuff that's official, the official product of a billion-dollar company, is obviously more disgusting and more heinous a transgression than, a custom campaign made by a couple of hobbyists. But I just wish that people were a bit more honest about the way that they presented their intentions, even if they didn't, make a great thing. They made stuff that you can be like. There's elements of that production that you can be happy with, like the user interface and stuff. Even though it does, the composition is not great, but there's certain components of it that are salvageable, are even good, and like we talked about in our review and in our playthrough. And so, I don't understand why they had to present it like it was this big influential. I mean, we've talked before about how Warcraft 3's custom campaign scene, quote unquote, needed an Antioch. And, StarCraft 2 had the same sort of nature, and this is trying to be that Antioch. And, it's an Antioch in name only.
For what it sounds like, it's close. It's close in the sense it's like Antioch, I guess.
Well, maybe in quality, but I can still look at. I understand what people say about why people say that about Brood Warrior stuff. I don't think I really give him enough credit for coining that term. Whoever decided to say that about Warcraft 3 or whatever. I understand why they say that like Antioch was so influential with Brood War, because I guess without it, we might not have had as many campaigns with custom voice acting. Because I think that you even made the observation maybe some years ago that Brood War actually had a shocking amount of people compared to other scenes that were interested in doing custom voices, that had the resources to, you go out and you search Protoss voice acting YouTube tutorial or whatever, you get back in like 2008 or whatever, you get like a bunch of hits, people trying to get, educate you on how to do Zealot voices and Dragoon processing and all this other stuff with Cool Edit Pro 2.1. And you had all those people. You had all these people that were willing to share their knowledge and their talents, whatever they had for voice acting and editing, and people were willing to do that. And you had campaigns like Reclamation of Ire, which coincidentally does not feature Ire. Don't ask me why. That campaign is fully voice acted, and it's not great, but there's some nice elements of it, some salvageable elements of it. But even though it's not great, it's still better than not having voice acting at all. Like, yes, the fact that it's included means that I can critique it, but you can say the same thing about having fucking gameplay in your campaign, Flame Knives. Like, the fact that there's gameplay there means I can critique it, but that doesn't mean that I don't want it there. And so I view it the same way as, like, voice acting. There's not, like, it's by no means the majority. It's very much a minority of custom campaigns that have voice acting, but the inclusion of it in such an early project like Antioch Chronicles means that I think it was very much like setting a bar, saying if you want to compete with the highest, or if you want to become the best custom campaign out there, then you need to have voice acting. That needs to be something that you do. And that I think that's planted the seed, whereas that's an obvious observation to everybody now. Most people back then probably weren't thinking of it the same way, just like they weren't thinking about AI being necessary as far as a component of a custom campaign goes. As shocking as that statement is now, where everybody says, yes, you need AI, back then people weren't thinking about it the same way. I don't know if they would have thought about the voice acting in the same way if Antioch wasn't there. And so that, alongside the whole idea of trying to, do something interesting with StarCraft as a setting, the concepts that they have in Antioch are not executed very well, but at the very least, they're something different than like the carbon copies we would see later on of just like taking StarCraft and doing weird shit with it. At least there's something there. And so I can see why people equate Antioch with like some sort of watershed moment in custom content history for Brood War. And I guess there really isn't anything like that for Warcraft 3 or StarCraft 2, despite the fact that both of those titles have numerous releases, because, none of them are really that stand out,
Yep, absolutely. I've been across many games, And the only game I know of to have voice acting in any amount is Skyrim, and pretty much all of it's not any good. I haven't heard any that's good yet, anyways. But there are people who try to do it, and they're willing to learn. So one day they will be good. And that's mostly, I believe, due to follower mods. So the one I did voice acting for was just expanded towns and stuff, and I did voice acting for a side NPC, and then there was a couple of other guys there, and it's like all kinds of different people. Like one guy was like 50, 60 years old, and he was getting into voice acting, and he was, starting to really shape up, and they were getting into it, and they were learning, and they were improving. But like take for example, like Homeworld 2 or Sins of a Solar Empire or Warcraft 3 or StarCraft 2, nobody fucking cares at all. Even though voice acting is like the most basic thing to get into. Like you may stress about a microphone and the recording quality and your background sound. You don't need to care about that when you're just starting out. Because the actor that needs to learn, that needs to improve is you. So while your samples may not sound amazing, you can still, get a cut. Like a lot of people I talk to when they start out, they're not used to hearing their own voice. They're not used to talking themselves because they're normies. So I gotta, shut them into a closet and say, just cast a video. Get into cast, play a game, push record, and talk to yourself, and get accustomed to it. That's actually like the strongest advice I could give to anybody, because I've taught a few people doing that, and it gets you comfortable, and comfort is the number one thing you need when voice acting. That's what's going to get you a natural voice that's actually believable. And you can tell in basically all of Antioch 3 that none of those people, except for a few of the female actors, were actually comfortable talking. Like Termalis wasn't comfortable, and it felt like that the actor for Trent wasn't comfortable, like, because a lot of it's really forced or overacted or underacted. Like basically they're not trying to voice it naturally. They're basically saying it as like, I'm an actor, so I'm going to act, as opposed to sitting down and saying, I'm going to be this character. Like there's a very, very big line you draw between that, because one of them is you reading from a script, and one of them is you acting the script without actually consciously, reading into it, which means that you are embodying the script as opposed to reading it out. If you're just reading it out, it's always going to sound fake, and that's precisely why Antioch 3 and, Legacy of the Void and stuff like that all sound so fucking fake. So I gotta BRB for a moment. Like I said, I have to jump AFK, so that's going to be this time. I have to do a couple things real quick. Otherwise, the tarot cards are going to get me. It's a balance.
All things in balance, my
insanity everywhere I go. So I will be back in about 5 or 10 minutes or so.
Well, I'll see you when you get back. Smoke weed. Well, it's just you and me, chat. What do you guys think about 2018? This is your opportunity, if you're still awake, to tell me how your 2018 went. Because, it's not always about just the two talking heads over here, the talking anime man and the talking Ka. Sometimes we'd like to get the chat involved, usually during downtime. In the meantime, I guess I can talk about some other smaller things. I'm still documenting my year here by writing down a bunch of shit that, based on the YouTube history that I've got going on here, I'm up to October, filling in that. And remember that there's like a swath of content missing from August to October, and that's because I had no internet until October. That's pretty depressing. So there is that. Man, that really annihilated me. But it's been a useful reflection tool, I think, being able to take a look at 2018 and say, hey, what's going on here? What happened here? Where did it all go wrong? Nothing can compare with the insanity that was Mesk's year, to be honest. Yeah, that's true. Hopefully some of you guys had a sane year. I'm not even sure if those exist, though. Like, I'm sure for some people that's, like, relatively stable or whatever. They're very okay average years. I actually like the roller coaster ride, honestly. I like the fact that, that I can never count on any one thing. I mean, in some cases it's exhausting, but in other cases it keeps you on your toes, and it makes you, appreciate your life a bit more, I think. I don't know if I could say the same for Mesk. He had a slightly more intense year than I did. As far as the roller coaster goes, it went down a lot more and didn't really come back up that much. So, at least mine was going up and down, and it seems to be ending up, which is nice. I'm not really sure about his. But yeah, the housing stuff was pretty silly. And I was kind of uncomfortable about talking about a lot of this stuff on this podcast just because like I have an aversion to discussing stuff that's personal, not because I try to be like withdrawn or whatever. I'm not really into the whole hermit thing, but it's more so that I always feel like, at least, especially if I'm talking about something that's happening in the moment, like it's okay for me to talk about all this stuff that happened like months ago or whatever. But for me, I always feel like it seems like I'm reaching for pity or whatever. And so I like to usually keep it short if I have to talk about it at all, just because I don't want to give the people like the wrong idea. I've seen too many swindlers on the internet, and I don't want to be seen as like e-bagging or whatever, especially even for like attention or let alone some sort of financial reward for being a shitty human being. And also, I like to take more personal responsibility for that stuff if possible, and realizing that I don't really, I'm not allowing myself to like go out and do that weird shit is helpful, I think, because then it reminds you that you got to fix it yourself, which is nice from a psychological perspective. But it's probably overblown. Like I figure most people probably don't mind if somebody that they are following content wise ends up talking about that stuff. But at the same time, I also feel like most of that shit, it's most people aren't really that interested in it. Most people, especially one thing that I definitely realized this year, is that most people are just here for the content. They're just here for the videos, the Brood War stuff, whatever else I end up making in my time as a angry man on the internet. And that's all they care about, man. That's why they're here. Maybe not. That's not all they care about as far as it goes here, because we do have something of a community on my server and on the streams. But I think it's useful to not get wrapped up in that stuff, and I definitely did a few times this year. And I guess I can't really remember if I did last year. Last year is a bit of a blur. I mean, we had our insane moments, chat. We had we had Jay Pr0nogo joining my server to call CR12 a dumb bitch. That was pretty funny. We had all the Vorguz stuff somehow resurfacing. We had the Necron stuff that happened as a result of the Vorguz stuff. So we had our fair share of silliness. But you know what? It's 2019 is coming up. It's a new year to be silly. And I just noticed that Don Svetlio is shouting out his favorite porn site. Thank you, Don Svetlio. I'll be sure to check that one out. Isn't porn just awful? That's my New Year's resolution. Stop looking at porn. It's gay. What are you into, fucking screens? Yeah, you little homo. I guess I wish, as far as things that I wish happened differently this year, besides all the silly petty drama that could have certainly been avoided and voided. One of the things that I definitely wish happened differently was the amount of educational content. Like, I made some reviews for custom campaigns and stuff. There's obviously a lot of entertainment in the campaign playthroughs themselves, and then there's a little bit of a time where I can scale back and talk about the educational elements and the ramifications and etc. of the various campaigns in their reviews, as well as the video games themselves, that like the full titles that I've played, like Dead Space or whatever. Those are useful for an educational purpose as well. But I wish I had been able to focus a bit more on the purely educational videos, where it's like more like the level design videos and stuff. I wanted to do one before 2019. I might still be able to get around to it, but unfortunately, I only just now finished like the outline for the first Terran mission, which I was going to use as an example, the one for Hydra 2.0. So I'm not sure about being able to crank out a video where I talk about the level design in depth, especially since Hydra uses a completely new game state about that stuff. So. Ah, there you go. Yes, Dynamo's RTS game collection. That's a big one. That is, there's so much shit in that. Man, there is some shit in that. However, he did say that Dark Colony seems really insane, and that's good, because I am not looking forward to getting that game back up and running, but I'm going to do so for completion's sake. So once that's done, my plan is for January, we're going to finish Battlecry 2, we're going to finish Dark Colony, and then we'll start and finish the Undead campaign for Legacy of Arcane, or Legends of Arcane, whatever it's called. And I I think at that point we'll really only have the second human book to deal with, and that'll probably be sometime in February or maybe after February, depending on how busy I am that month. But hopefully I can start getting into like the rest of the games. Like I want to finish the Battlecry franchise entirely with the third game, which is the last RTS released in the franchise. And then I'd like to be able to go back in time even further to like the, or maybe not back in time, but find some more 2D RTS to play. It's definitely an ambitious attempt to try and, like an ambitious goal to like play all of these really obscure old RTS games and try to play every single one released that I have access to, because I have access to a lot. But we'll see what happens. Oh man, what else can you say? Dynamo's been quite an acquisition, actually. He popped in here for I think he started commenting on the Eon of the Hawk videos. I could be wrong about that. But Metatron brought him to me, said, hey, this guy owes me a beer. Can you keep watch on him? And I was like, yeah, sure. And then we stole the rest of Metatron's beer. We fucked around with RTS games. And, he wants to do a co-cast similar to the Mesk style co-cast for Mental Omega. That's another project that I've got to get done in 2019. No idea when. Probably February. Probably not January. But that'll be exciting. I'm sure a lot of people are looking forward to the Mental Omega playthrough. And he said he's just going to check out the stream, especially if we end up doing it on Mixer. Man, that's another problem, is like it's going to fragment the viewer base quite a bit. My 7 viewers are going to go down to 3 on Mixer. So that'll be really just a big shame. But for the 2D RTS, there's a fuck ton of StarCraft ripoffs that I'm looking forward to. Yeah, I remember Akron, you said it was the time traveling one, which seems really psychotic just in concept, but I haven't even bothered to look into it, so I'm going in completely blind, other than knowing that it has time travel. Whenever that ends up happening. So I guess I can add that to the list. I've got a lot of RTS that are like, I don't have them installed per se, but I have them downloaded waiting to install them. So I will be running them at some point. I just want to finish the ones that I've already got on my plate. I was hoping to actually have less of a full plate going into January. I wanted to have more of a clean slate, but looking at what we have to do in January, we have to finish Life is Strange, we have to finish Battlecry 2 and Dark Colony, and then I think I'll be able to finish the Orc campaign of Legends of Arcane in the next stream, which will hopefully be like the 30th or something. Yes, I heard a lot about the first releases. Thankfully, it seems like I don't know about thankfully. They have updated it a lot, though, is what I've been told. It's been like completely redone a few times, which is pretty crazy. Sounds like my workload. I actually reached out to one of the guys responsible for some of the building art, asking him if he would be interested in making some art for Hydra when the time came. But he said that his skills were not up to par for StarCraft. I don't know what that means exactly. It might have just been an excuse. But hopefully that guy is still hanging in there, because I liked a little bit of what Dynamo showed me. He seemed like he was competent enough to do what I needed, but maybe he just didn't have the time or whatever. But I got to hunt down artists later on for that stuff. That'll be like, hopefully by the end of January, the new game state has been worked on for Hydra. Then we can move on to the development of further maps. We can do some melee testing sessions live and all that good stuff. That'll be its own experiment for sure. But yeah, I'm looking forward to 2019, man. It's we're ending the year on a high note. I managed to survive the holiday season, which is always silly. In fact, I think the whole holiday thing is really goofy to me, because you have like this idea that you're supposed to shell out all this money and spend all this time with family that you probably don't like, if it's extended family. Thankfully, I get to just spend it with family I do like, but I know that not everybody is that fortunate. So, yeah, I don't know what to say about all that. But there's plenty of room in 2019 for silly family time. We don't really need to ring in the new year like that. Eon of the Hawk was the highlight of this channel for me this year. Yeah. Eon of the Hawk was a real sick campaign, man. I actually do think it was worse than Flame Knives, even though it was shorter. But Dynamo maintains that it was better. He's a crazy person. But what can you do, man? Sometimes people are crazy. Sometimes people are not Metatron. Oh, man. So, the only thing I have on my screen is map crap number 5, Satan's Butthole by Balothal. So that's something for you to look forward to. That's look backwards at, I guess. I can't believe I did Flame Knives in 3 months, Eon of the Hawk in 2. Man, there were some seriously sick campaigns. Or no, Eon of the Hawk actually, I think I just barely finished it at the beginning of September, so technically it took 3 months. But still pretty sick. I actually, totaling it up, I have done like, I think I've already documented like 25 or something playthroughs. There's a lot of stuff in the early stages of the year that I barely remember. Half a year of Metatron. Dude, that's not even counting Vile Aggression. Man, what a sick experience. I can't believe it's real. Wait, I fucked something up here. I started documenting October before finishing September, apparently. Yeah, this stuff has to go the other month. Wait, where the fuck did I get all this stuff? Man, YouTube is a service. You know, if you have a lot of videos, you try searching for a couple of them. Like I'm just searching between 3-month ranges, so I'm doing like every quarter individually. And looking at this shit, in order to get access to the pages, you have to scroll to the bottom of the page. So like you can't go to page 2 unless you scroll all the way to the bottom, which means loading all the thumbnails and all this other stuff that makes the browser really slow. Then, if you want to go to like page 5, it doesn't even tell you that there's a 5th page until you click on page 2, then scroll down and click on page 3, then scroll down and click on page 4. And then if there's a page 5, you'll know when you scroll down on page 4. And maybe there's a page 6. You don't fucking know. You have no idea. Fucking stupid. What a service, man. What a service. Absolute state of Canada. Was kind of hoping Mesk would come back for that one. I summoned him, but he did not answer. I also saw Pr0nogo talking about the cat situation with Mesk. I think that's what?
What's up?
Oh, hi.
I mentioned cats.
I mentioned
Or
cats.
you heard cat. Hold on, let me try again. I heard someone mention cats.
Well, that's what summons you. Yeah, I was just because Pr0nogo was in the chat talking about it sounds like you should cut your losses with the cat, but it seems like that's just like an emotional attachment, right? Like I think we just talked about that.
Yeah, I would never do that.
Right. So that answers that question.
That cat is basically my only family, so no, I'm going down to the very, very, very big.
How old is it?
I think she's around 12, 13, 14, something around.
Oh, okay. She's getting up there in the years. What's up, Dynamo? We were just talking about you, dude. Dynamo just joined the chat. I think you should just cut your losses with your grandma. No! He's talking about cats.
I wish I could, but unfortunately I can't.
Yeah, that's sick, man.
I am stuck in this situation. There's no way out. So
can't even read some tarot cards or anything.
I reckon I have probably about a year or 2 left to live, basically. If I survive longer than that, and if the situation has been degraded beyond that, I will actually be completely astonished.
Well, that's a very uplifting message at the end of the year, so.
Mm-hmm. Very, very uplifting.
That's 2 years to enjoy more StarCraft 2 co-casts.
Oh, God. Why do you have to make them so miserable?
I didn't make them.
Yes, you did. You subjected me to this.
Well, yeah, that's true, but I didn't make the products. That was all Blizzard.
Yes, but I would have been better just to have my hand up my ass and my head in the sand.
So
I didn't need to know that fucking Tony made 30 missions of a move again.
Yeah, you also didn't need to know that Tassadar was a Xel'Naga, so.
Oh, God. Why?
Man, I really wish that I had you on the hook for these Metatron campaigns, because you would have actually killed yourself, I think. That if you knew what I suffered through, oh man, Oh, we could have done voice acting the same way that Patrick and I did for Undertale. Man, that would have been so good. Can I take a time machine back, please? So at this point, I guess I don't know. Is there anything else notable about 2018 that we can discuss? I guess the whole LardCon stuff happened, but we already made a whole podcast about that. So lots of gaming related news occurred with all of this stupid
Blizzard
shit.
embarrassing. I think we already talked about Blizzard and all the other companies embarrassing themselves endless.
Yeah, I mean we talked about that in its own. That was the last podcast. That was like 2 months ago or something, a month ago. But yeah, that was pretty sick, man. I can't believe that that Bethesda situation got even worse afterwards, though. Not only did they like fuck up the bag even more than they had already fucked it up, they also got to a point where like I think they updated the game. They patched in loot crates. That's what they added.
Are you surprised?
Yes, I am surprised.
Why would you be surprised?
Because
all
like,
games are gonna have loot crates now.
Yeah, but like they were already under fire for releasing an unfinished game with shitty
but
pre-order.
Americans want loot crates in their game. They're actually trying to defend it. Americans like paying $70 for a skin. Maybe.
Maybe. Or a JPEG.
Maybe. Yeah. That's why Overweight is so popular, because it's such a successful business model. I mean, why else would it be popular if people didn't like loot crates?
I still can't believe that the fucking Overwatch League, their esports side, is actually what's making them profit. That's insane.
Actually, it's worth talking about Overweight and esports and Blizzard, because
well, they did kill Heroes of the Storm finally.
Yeah, that's it. The Heroes of the Storm is getting the axe, and you can guarantee StarCraft 2 has gotten the axe before it's even started. But I mean, all they've done for it is just push out shitty DLC, so it's not like they're giving it the axe. But was that StarCraft 2 mobile thing actually?
Yeah, the one that you saw the image album a while ago, like a day ago.
Is that like a Blizzard product or something else?
I think it's a Chinese product.
But it's under Blizzard's logo, right? Like it's like the Diablo one?
I have no idea. I didn't look into any more information, but from what I can tell, it's not. At least I didn't see anything about Blizzard licensing or Blizzard. I don't know. I just know a Chinese developer made it. It's unlicensed. Wow. That's what it is. So yeah, it's there's something similar going on with Warcraft 3 where they managed to make it run without any of the default DLLs or something. Like they reverse engineered it and they're launching it on tablets or something. So the Chinese are crazy. They just want all that stuff on phones for some reason.
I'm playing a Chinese game right now.
Oh, ni hao.
Yeah, I'm playing Ni Hao. So China is really strange. The situation with China is really strange too, because for the longest time Americans didn't want to become like China. They didn't want like that total government control and the Great Firewall of China and all this other shit, and the
well, leave it to the liberals.
The credits, but that's where they're going with liberals and stuff like that, because that's actually where you're at. Because if you have a public spotlight and you so much as look at somebody who is, for example, like grotesque in just a slightly off manner, you have this huge witch hunt that gets you yanked from your community, your job, all this other shit. You have this huge witch hunt by just a few screeching liberals, and it's got to the point where like people are censoring stuff before it even goes to America because they're so scared of negative press from it. And you've reached that point where America is at that, it's building that iron wall, that iron curtain, but also in other respects as well, like the ISPs and the corporations are gaining so much control, and they're all, liberal controlled. Like take, for example, Google controlling search results and stuff like that, like the information control. Like you have already got a firewall going on in terms of how information is distributed to the average person because of the monopoly and how involved they are with their own agendas and shit like that. And now you've got like game developers and casters and people who do any kind of public media that are too scared to even oppose it anymore, except for pushing their own for-profit alternatives. And it's just like it is really depressing to look at what the internet has become. Like Blizzard and companies like Blizzard and Bethesda should be getting shit on so much more than they are. Investors should be pulling left and right. A lot of people in big places should be asking all kinds of hard-hitting questions like what the fuck is wrong with these people? But it's really just like a few casuals that are complaining because they realize that this developer is doing dumb shit. But there's not nearly the kind of backlash that there needs to be because we've just somehow brainwashed everybody into thinking that it's okay to ask people for money for not even a real product to begin with, much less anything comparative to what we could have paid half the price for years and years and years ago. There's basically no actual business going on because it's all so heavily processed and controlled. And Skyrim really like opens your eyes to that getting into it because it's not just like Blizzard and EA and Bethesda and yada yada yada. It's all the people making mods too. They're all the exact same fucking way, where people have just as a body just stopped caring. You know, they just want those endorsements. They want that 5 minutes of fame for being on the front page of Nexus or some shit. They don't actually care about pushing out something that's polished. And you have Bethesda who can't even exert their, end user license agreement that says we own everything you make. Take all these bug fixes that people have made for their game and publish it as a patch and make the experience better for everybody. They just don't fucking care. I'm just so bamboozled by that. You got to go into the degenerate communities. Like people consider them like the degenerate communities, like the fetish mods and the furries and the shit like that, who everybody hates. And then you find these people who are stuck in these niches that aren't necessarily making furry or fetish stuff. They're just building like other unrelated stuff that they decided to release in these communities because these are communities where people are actually engaging on a user to user level and are actually interested in like providing feedback and seeing stuff get finished and improved. And you have this like when I was going through Skyrim and I talked to people who made Skyrim mods, some of the biggest mods for the game, and going through the history and talking about people who made stuff and were a part of their experiences and stuff like that. And then actually like going through the actual websites, you see like a huge divide between Nexus, the big mainstream, let's say, because you think of Skyrim mods, obviously you think of Nexus, right? There's a lot of sub communities besides Nexus, are rather small, tightly knit, and there's like this huge trench dug between them. Even though you will see links and distribution and members get tossed between them, there's still a significant division between those communities. And I don't know enough to comment on specific user to user interactions, if the community has had some kind of falling out with each other or whatever. But there is like a division, and there is a lot of people who feel like Nexus is just a garbage site and they don't want their stuff on it. Of course, the paid mod thing is really shook a lot of people up too. A lot of people yank their stuff and they'll never put it back up. And then Bethesda went through with it anyways. And it like, but then you've got the actual like the bodies of people on these different websites who just hate these labels. Like they don't like Nexus, but Nexus is like thousands to tens of thousands to more people depending on which area you go to. And they just, as a body, they're just completely and totally opposed to it. It's like sane people in Reddit. Nobody wants to deal with Reddit because if you deal with Reddit by association, you are a true degenerate. You are like a subhuman, and it it comes with the branding because there's an association with it. And I think the association with Nexus is that it's because people just want attention more than they actually want to produce quality products. Like that's to me the estimation I've gotten. But when it comes to consuming content and not really developing it, you get into this middle ground that a lot of people just suddenly turn apologistic. And the thing with like Heroes of the Storm and Blizzard and all this other shit is Blizzard is still in business despite insulting every single person who has ever invested into their products time and time and time and time and time and time again. They've destroyed all of their franchises. They've burned every possible bridge. They've spurned modders at every opportunity. And people still come crawling back. There's still people out there under the delusion that Blizzard gives a shit. Not that they produce quality products or that there's a question of quality or good games, but that Blizzard actually cares. There's still people under that delusion. There's still people who can't see past that fucking, Prozac marketer smile that are they just don't want to accept that maybe this isn't really a good idea to keep supporting this kind of behavior. Now we've entered a stage where that's actually the only choice. Because every fucking developer is Blizzard or like Blizzard. Because Blizzard set the example by being successful. They set the example by DMCAing stuff they didn't agree with. They set the example by exerting marketing control and blatantly stealing from other less known developers and taking advantage of their logo to profit off of other people's work. They have set the example of, we can be this lazy and this incompetent and just hit all the right marketing buzzwords to still be wildly successful beyond imagination, because a market exists of people who just plainly don't give two fucks. 2018 has really taught this. Like, really, really hammered that is. We've known that for years and years and years, ever since the years of Nintendo Power and the N64, but now it's just insanity.
Well, I think that it reminds me of the thing that I brought up earlier in this podcast, where I was talking about quality fixing as opposed to price fixing. It feels like it's in that it really does feel deliberate to me, because I know that it doesn't take that much work, to more than what they're already doing, to make something that they have that's functional actually good, or at least passable.
Think about it. It costs money to put an effort, right? It costs time and resources. And what makes a good business? Not spending money, but making money. That's what I mean by Blizzard set the example, and companies like them set the example that you can do this. You don't have to put in energy. So yeah, it's like quality fixing in that sense, but it's more like people look at the examples of what is successful, and then they just copy that, and then they too are successful. Or maybe they struggle a little bit, but they still make ends meet. And that's ultimately what it will look like, is quality fixing.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is I don't know enough about individual, like, high-end, like, backroom deals or whatever to comment on the actuality of that. But that's sort of the reality that they create, whether or not it's deliberate or just a sort of byproduct. And I feel like looking at the games, like these end products, the way that we do, it's not enough to just say, well, this game is bad, or this game is objectively flawed, and this game could have been improved taking 5 minutes per level and fixing all this obvious shit or whatever, because we've both talked about that at length. There is at some point where I feel like, with the number of podcasts that we've done, we're on the 22nd one, and the 22nd of 2018, and so it's not like an insane number, but it's a pretty respectable amount anyways. And we've talked about a number of topics, we've made a number of observations, we've played a number of video games, and made a number of educational content this year just to back up our observations and to research, essentially, as part of researching. I feel like after a certain point, you have to realize that, like, it's been this way for a while. It's not getting better. It's getting more predatory as far as the business practices go. There's got to be some sort of breaking point that we should have reached a long time ago. Hopefully we reach it soon, because at this rate, we're not going to ever get it fixed unless people actually wake up and smell the shit that's been smeared on their face for the past years.
Think about the business practice of the average software developer right now. What do you think makes the most money?
Probably small and microtransactions, like small effort.
Data. So before it was advertisements.
Oh, you meant like, well, I thought you were talking about video games specifically.
Well, I said software, so yeah, software in general. But video games play into this. Because remember, Blizzard pushed ads on Battle.net for years.
Right.
There was shady ads all over fucking Diablo 2, all over fucking Warcraft 3, all over StarCraft 1. They put ads in their game because that made them money. But advertisements are falling out because more and more people are realizing that no script is mandatory, uBlock Origin is mandatory. Before that it was AdBlock Plus, before alternatives came out. This stuff is mandatory to have, not just for security, but for performance, because the internet is becoming less and less and less functional as it becomes more and more JavaScript heavy. And it just gets more and more bloated because more and more people are enabled to make websites that are not qualified to make websites. But there's another factor to it too. It's more about data. So to a company like, let's say, for example, Google, they don't give two shits about if you block an ad or not. It's not going to affect them at all because the value of ads is dropping anyways. What they want is your data. They want to know who you are. They want to know your habits. They want to know your purchasing habits. They want to know where you live. They want to know what your blood cholesterol level is. They want to know what you drink. They want to know what you eat. They want to know your family. They want to know your contacts. They want to build a informational network about you. They want to know everything about you. And while I'm sure superficially it's largely about, selling to marketers, giving them the information directly rather than using the advertisement so they know precisely how to manipulate and push products. But it's also in part to the government as well. The government, you've got that dystopia thing going on, that Big Brother thing going on, where I believe some American cities are actually completely infested with cameras right now, just like China. So for a while early on, like early 2000s, late 1990s, people were scared about the government watching over them. Now they just accept it. So they do. They watch everything. And I was only recently introduced to this. I didn't realize it was so far widespread. But apparently right now it is very commonplace for like restaurants and like end shops to have cameras and stuff with facial recognition software that study you as you look at their products. They study your expressions and they build a mental profile of you as you look at things. And they study how you respond to their stuff. So it's no longer about, an individual sitting behind the counter and you talking to him or her and being like, hey, I want this, I want that. Can I look at this? Can I look at that? A system which logs everything, not an individual, no, logs everything, has all this information about you and collects it at a rate far exceeding what individuals could have. And then this information is now valuable because now you know precisely what your engagement was like with this product so long as they were within the camera and it was able to recognize them. And I don't know about the efficiency or how widespread this stuff is. I just know that people have seen it by extent of the software being exposed to them inadvertently. Like something would crash and monitors would show all this stuff. There was a bunch of photos and stuff about it. And it's all over the place. And obviously, like search engines and stuff like that are all AI driven and things like that. There's plenty of videos about that if you really want to get into it. But Google and all these other, mega corporations, they make a lot of their bank off of information. Now, think for a moment the average phone game that is also a microtransaction platform. And it's very true that microtransactions are a huge boost. We've talked about the value of microtransaction content over actual games and how much bigger of a boost you get out of selling one item for $5 rather than the 10 cents it's actually worth. And then getting like several million sales off of it. But at the same time, if you can do that while also collecting all this information about your users, how they browse your shop, what they clicked on, when they clicked on it, and then compare it to a whole bunch of other seemingly unrelated data, like the releases of other titles, marketing trends, hashtag trends, search trends, maybe like when income comes out and stuff like that, then it becomes kind of predatory. Then it becomes about how can we game this system to take advantage of this data. That's what marketers and people building this stuff really want. Because the thing is, there's a difference between an advertisement and marketing. An advertisement is an individual trying to sell a product that somebody's looking for. Marketing is trying to sell somebody a product they don't really need. The whole game about marketing is to do the developer's work for them. It's to do the company's work for them. It's to inject into your thought and make you believe that this is something you want. This is something you need. So all this useless fucking shit, like the infamous power saver, you plug it into a wall and the light turns on. Yeah, there's that. Classic American examples. The DVD rewinder, shit like that. Apple stuff as well, all falls into there. You don't need Apple. Apple doesn't offer you any advantage over any cheaper alternative except being more locked down, more difficult to repair. Americans had to pass a law that allowed you to reverse engineer your device when it's out of fucking service. Just because of people like fucking Apple trying to lock things down to the point in this fucking arms race of trying to prohibit people from servicing their own shit. Because they rely so heavily on the ignorance being scammed and gamed by their marketing that they need to sell this insanely overpriced, rebranded shit. That's just like, throwaways from Intel or whatever with their broken ass operating system. They have to shovel this crap on you at an insane fucking fee. And the second people crack that open, it's all over for them because now they can no longer sell you a cable at $80 fucking dollars. They no longer can take advantage of their planned obsolescence, the reduced warranty thing they got slapped with in the European Union, and all this other shit. They rely on their marketing alone because the actual products are something that nobody with any degree of sanity would ever invest money into. But people do learn over time. They do things over time. Somebody who spent $8,000 on a fucking laptop doesn't think he needs to spend another $8,000 on a fucking laptop a year later because a couple keys are broken. But Apple tries to tell you, yes, you do, but everybody else says, no, you don't. So Apple tries to make it legally impossible for you to do so. They try to say, hey, you can't just fix this. You have to get us to fix it. We'll charge you $150 and Ted will charge you $5, but you got to do it to us because it's Apple brand. It's fucking special. And then people start asking questions. But if you're so fucking stuck in the marketing, then you won't think about that. And in order to have the information necessary to make people think that way, you need to know how people think. You need to know how to manipulate them. So, again, we talked about this before, the loot box ceremony thing where the screen shakes and lights flash, and there's like that buildup of tension. That's all about that adrenaline addiction. That's what marketing has told them is most effective. If we just had a button you push and suddenly you got loot, it wouldn't have the ceremony. It wouldn't be as bombastic. It wouldn't be as tremendous. It wouldn't be as triumphant. Oh, you clicked the idiot button and you got a gold out of it. Congratulations! It's not quite as fantastic as the whole fucking screen shaking, your house shaking, ornaments falling from the walls and trumpets blaring and choirs screaming and shit like that. You need fucking Triumph for spending $5 on a fucking overweight loot box.
Yeah, well, soon we'll all be strapped into VR and opening a loot box will actually get you a dick suck.
I sure hope so. I really could use Obama's lips.
I really think that that's the future at this point. I mean, one of the main reasons why the main reason why virtual reality, I think, is even solvent at this point is because of all the people watching porn.
Well, Japan definitely has got that going on there.
Well, can you imagine how profitable overweight will be when these people can actually fuck their waifus? Dude, that's a game changer right there, man.
Well, that's one of the reasons why Overweight is so popular to begin with, is because Blizzard, I actually think it may have been a very clever marketing play. You remember how when Overweight came out and Blizzard announced their hatred towards Rule 34 for that game and how they were going to attack it, and then they proceeded to do nothing about it?
Yes.
I'm sure I mentioned this before, maybe even just last podcast, but the Rule 34 is one of the reasons why that game is so popular. It is absolutely one of the reasons why the game is so popular.
Oh, I'm sure.
Blizzard's marketers, there's one thing Blizzard does very well. It's marketing. They know how marketing works. They know how to play that game. That's why they're successful. They're not trying to push their products to people who play games. They're trying to push their products to people who want to identify as people who play games. And the Rule 34 stuff is an excellent gateway drug into that. But not everybody knows about Rule 34, especially when it comes to casuals. The whole term Rule 34, I believe, comes from 4chan, and most people don't even know what 4chan even is. Or they have some kind of innate distrust of it because those memesters are mean.
And anonymous.
Yeah,
the hacker known as 4chan.
Rule 34 and everything related is probably alien to them, right?
Right, so Blizzard then makes this big noise about it, and then it's in the public consciousness.
Then they put it in the mind, and now some people are going to get curious. There's porn in this game. I'm going to go see what that's all about. And then
they become furries.
It creates something cyclical. A cyclical mind. Yes, they're not playing Blizzard's product or whatever, but they've got Overweight and Overweight's character and Overweight's imagery in their mind for longer than they're attached to the product. And that is an incredibly successful marketing scheme because Blizzard didn't invest a single fucking dollar into it. It's everybody else making this shit. It's everybody else pushing it out. It's everybody else trying to get their Patreon bucks for it. All Blizzard had to do was drive traffic in their direction, but because it's based on their product and their franchise, they have injected, the thought about their product in these people's minds by extent of using a third party as a proxy. And even if only 1% of those people come back to play Overweight, and only 1% of those buy loot boxes as a result of that, that's still a huge amount of fucking people for the amount of exposure they had with that announcement. And that's still a huge amount of money return for literally no investment whatsoever. Overweight costed them maybe $100 to make, and that's it. And then they make a tweet or something about how outraged they are that people are making porn about our game and how we're going to stop them. Everybody's going to have a gaffe about that. But then a chunk of them might actually try to see what it's all about. What's got Blizzard's Jimmy's and a Russell. And
some of them might buy loot boxes.
Perfect. Yeah, some of them might buy loot boxes as a result. Because the longer something stays in your head, the longer you are thinking about a product, the more likely you are to interact with that product.
Right. So, well, I did not think about it in that angle, but that is, I mean, maybe it was deliberate. The thing is, like, I've seen Blizzard make so many other mistakes in the same vein that have not resulted in financial success. I'm not really sure if I'll chalk it up to intention. It certainly did work in their favor, I think, though, because
you guys all have phones, don't you?
Oh, no. I still can't believe that fucking...
They actually said that.
That is
actually
insane.
Fucking said that. And someone else has sent me another video. I'm going to put my WoW compilation. I haven't gone through the whole thing. I need to get on my virtual machine and rep it off of YouTube. But it seems to be a Blizzard representative saying we don't want you to play Demonology Warlocks. Like, that's their response to them. Like, people asking why they're nerfing them is they say we don't want you to play it.
Yeah, that's like when that's like when Riot Games reached out to professional players in the NALCS back in season 3 or season 4 or something. And it was when Cloud9 was having their big run, which I believe was season 3, spring or something like that. And the mid laner for that team played Teemo. And Riot reached out to him and said, please do not play Teemo anymore in LCS because we don't want to have to balance him.
Yeah.
So that's real correspondence.
Riot, by the way, for those of you listening, Riot is the same company that recently announced they're going to be hiring a chief diversity officer.
Well, they have to because
concerned about the skin color of their employees and how they're being projected to the public than they are about their product.
They have to do all that social justice shit now. It's not like they can do nothing when there's been endless fucking allegations of sexual abuse amongst their staff. People literally are like, there's somebody who's going to court or something. Maybe not, actually. Maybe he's just on paid leave or something. But there's people who... There's a guy, at least one man, farted in other people's faces, other employees' faces. I'm not making that up. That's real. That is a real thing. At least one man has farted in his employees' faces. Repeatedly. Not just once. Like, this is a repeat practice. And I have to look this up. I have to get this right for sure.
Listen. DeviantArt has a community that has a fetish related to inhaling farts. This man is a natural functioning member of society, and you are a bigot for criticizing his fetish.
Riot Games is full of misogyny and face farting, according to former employees. Okay, so the allegations from multiple sources run the gamut from similar situations said by women in other adjacent industries. According to those sources, women were often talked over, objectified in private over email, passed over for promotions, sent unwanted genitalia pictures, repeatedly questioned about their gamer cred, and criticized for possessing the qualities, like giving direct feedback and being loud, that men don't get judged for. The anecdotes explaining these events were corroborated by multiple people and even affected the men, according to Kotaku. One male employee even said that one person would, if no woman were in the room, quote, just fart on someone's face.
So what he's saying, he feels is it's inequality that the women are not getting.
Yes, that's why they need their diversity quota, or whatever, their diversity officer. Dude, can you believe that that's where Riot Games went in 2018? Jesus Christ.
I can believe it. After seeing their products, I can believe it. It takes a special kind of derangement to put League in the position it's in, where you're selling fucking icons.
Yes, selling icons for Riot Points. Apparently, Hoopter is in the chat here saying, whatever intern made that K-pop LOL video, which I'm not familiar with, but apparently they made one, was fired shortly after finishing it because LMAO job security. So I don't know anything about that. If you can link me a story about that.
They pushed out another... Riot made a few animated shorts in their time, and they recently made one, which was a K-pop video animation. And the getting fired thing is actually pretty common, I believe, because they don't make these things often. They don't want to make these things often. They just want to quickly throw in something for PR. So these guys are not going to be stuck on their budget. So as soon as they're able to be axed, that's it. And yeah, that's it. Job security.
Okay, well, here's some more of that fart guy. We have his name, Scott Gelb, Gelb. He's been suspended for 2 months without pay following reports of sexual misconduct in the workplace and a pending lawsuit against the company. Okay, reports of Riot's bro culture first surfaced in late August, detailing multiple allegations of sexual misconduct and gender discrimination in the workplace. Gelb specifically has been accused of repeatedly farting on employees, humping them, and hitting their testicles as part of what was described as a running workplace gag. This guy's not just like farting on people, he's punching them in the dick.
He must be like the CEO or something.
He's the COO, apparently. Which is like chief operations, I don't know. Well,
he sounds like a real swell guy. We need to get him on here. I want to hear about his DeviantArt account.
Yeah, I would love to too. Okay,
I don't know how much Sonic/Vicky's written.
Well, I searched fart to find this in the article, and it came up with more than one match, but the second match is just the Say Fart Shaw is a law firm. So that's just fucked up, man. You can't put that in the same... What is wrong with these people? So I guess more than 3 months into its... Wait, what? Oh, apparently 3 months ago when these allegations first surfaced in August, Riot Games came out with this bullshit about how they were going to do a 16-month cultural transformation timeline. What is this?
That's Riot trying to rebuff bad press, basically. They want to try to turn something negative into something positive and get more hits on their Twitter feed, I suppose. People just have this obsession with appearing righteous and progressive. Because, again, the screeching minority just happens the only people even talking.
Yeah, well, that's the problem is behind closed doors. I mean, you remember the Riot Light stuff with Riot Games, right? Where that Jeffrey Lynn guy goes by the username Light was like policing the forums and the game, and he was behind a bunch of interviews or not interviews, questionnaires that players would fill out after games, and the questions were like, were you a bully in high school or middle school or so, like, and like one of them had something to do with like killing animals or something, and like it was just real sick shit. He was like asking these people these psychological questions and evaluations after they played a game of League of Legends. Like, I guess it had something to do with the amount of reports that they garnered or something, but it's real strange that that guy did that. His goal was to make the internet a better place, clearly. And he got fucking annihilated afterwards. They found out that he had like this history of abuse towards women and stuff. So, yeah, Alejandro's in the chat saying the same thing, something similar. Let me just see if I can find an exact source on that. And let's see. Yeah, here he is.
The product is representative of the people.
Yes. Okay. Former Riot employee Jeffrey Riot Light Lynn was caught up in a scandal as information about his illicit past came into view. This guy has issues. Serious issues. What kind of fucking website am I reading this from? Let's see. People, oh man, they have some pretty funny tweets here at the very least. I like how this is journalism, by the way, just documenting tweets. This whole article is just tweets. What is wrong with this place? So I guess he was he cheated on his fiance with 19-year-old fangirl, and then just like ghosted her afterwards. And he replied to somebody was like, he said, "There's two sides to every story. I'd prefer to just leave it to court." Like what? What a response! Doesn't even explain himself or try to. Like most people, yeah, it would be really funny anyways. But still, that's some sick shit, man. There's a Google Docs with all the accusations. It's a drier read, but also a descent into insanity. Well, that's I don't know, man. Yeah, I think that this is just what's going to happen is either you're going to see more of this or it's just going to fall off. Like not necessarily with Riot. I feel like this is happening in all of these companies though, because like the thing is, if you think about who makes video games to begin with, like back in the early stages of making League of Legends, these people were mostly hobbyists, right? They weren't actually professionals. Like maybe some of them amongst them were, but the culture that the company had was like, we're a startup, we're a small team of like sub 50 people or whatever. We're just gonna make some shit, you know? Everybody knows everybody. They have all these like, you know, maybe they do have some funny jokes that they pull on people, like farting in their faces apparently, but like whatever they got, like it was a more acceptable and maybe even expected. Maybe there was some fucking hazing rituals, I don't know. Maybe these guys came from college, like there's all these different fraternities and stuff in college that pull the same shit, and it doesn't seem that hard to imagine that would be very easily translated into some sort of like small town, you know, small time developer like what Riot was when they became an upstart, right? And then when they were just working on League of Legends to begin with. And of course you're gonna have this lag where you don't really know how to adapt to sudden success and being owned by China and all this other crazy shit. And I just can't believe that this, like, Tencent must be like getting ready to just offload all this Riot Games League of Legends stuff anyways, because they're not even pulling the same figures that they were like a few years ago. At this point, the money is in these like phone games, PUBG and Fortnite and all this other stuff. Like,
they own a lot of that shit too.
yes, Tencent owns the majority stake in a lot of that stuff. They had the majority stake in Epic.
They own a good chunk of Discord as well.
Yeah, so they also own a majority stake in Bluehole. It's
data.
It's data, but it's also all of these, like the control of the mass market. Like they control basically, they have a controlling interest, if not a majority stake, in everything that is like a massive game these days. And I'm pretty sure even Valve has to go through them to publish CS:GO in China and Dota 2 in China. And of course Dota 2 is huge in China. So like that, it's just insane. Like they have their own like chat client and stuff that's like similar to like I guess Discord, but like a Chinese one. It's like a similar client to what MSN Messenger was back in the day, or instant messaging, like AOL. Like they have all this stuff. They're like a household name in China, but they also control so much of what the West engages with on a daily basis with their like multiple, massively multiplayer online games. I guess the only thing that I'm not aware of an association with is Blizzard, but who the fuck knows at that point?
Yeah, you'd have to look at Blizzard shares to know for sure. But Tencent, like only now are people starting to realize just how big Tencent is, other than people who are directly dealing with their games or are otherwise in China.
I'll be right back.
But yes, Tencent is actually enormous, and I think in about 5 to 10 years, you will probably find Tencent starting to directly compete with Google and probably taking, unless America and Canada first. Canada will do it. We'll do it first. We're going to become more like China. We're already locking down the internet. We're already handing over the keys to, the few individuals at the top of the food chain. We're already giving up all of our freedom, all of our security, all of our identity. And we already have a lot of mass censorship going on, especially in Europe. Europe right now is sort of like 2 steps ahead of us. But we are on that route because we will all follow each other down. And Tencent owns a massive amount of the currently most successive stuff, where they have a significant hand in it. And it's not just China, it's also, obviously America as well. And it's not being Chinese, I don't really know too much about Tencent other than that their interest is definitely in data. They're very, very interested in data. Discord is a data mining platform. It is closed source, and it is extremely memory and extremely CPU hungry. It is undoubtedly data mining. It is a fact that they are logging every single thing you say on it in a server or otherwise. It is also a fact that they are giving that to Tencent. So the developers for Discord have been sued in the past for similar practices, but now they've really hit the ball on the head because now Discord is as big as it is, in large part due to AIM dying. AIM dying really set them up for success because AIM was just a better platform all around, and then it just stopped and died as soon as Discord started really gaining traction. It basically forced everything onto their lap, and there is no alternative. People are trying to become like Discord instead of, not being shit. So unfortunately, a lot of people are stuck with this. I would personally very much enjoy just sticking to XMPP servers and just ignoring Discord entirely, or just going back to IRC. But unfortunately, a large number of people I still talk to or run games for are using Discord exclusively, which is very frustrating. But I just don't put valuable stuff on Discord is all.
Yeah, you got to be really
But
protective with your data if you're going to be using any of these like popular chat clients,
yeah.
regardless of what the nature of that data is.
But that's the thing though, like Tencent has got a big stake in that. And now Discord is as big as it is. So Tencent owns, the big shit, the big heavy hitters all in China. Now they're basically doing the same in the West. Like what chat applications for the average user can you really think of beside Discord? I guess people use Facebook for that, like the normies who don't care about their information anyways. And you can guarantee Tencent has access to that information too. I am
Well,
sure
yeah,
that
of course they have access to it because there's a Facebook integration to Discord itself. So through any
yeah.
number of, I mean, I'm pretty sure there's one for like the Epic Games launch or whatever. Like anything that has Facebook integration is automatically a pretty big issue. Just for data safety and everything else, because regardless of what it tells you, it has access to. Zuck can fuck you no matter what.
No. And I just think that at the very least, you should be made aware whenever you use these applications that your data is being mined. You are the product, you are being sold, and everything you say is not private. I think that should be like brought up right in your face in huge bold red letters the second you start Discord and stuff like that. The fact it's not shows that there is a serious problem with our legal system, much less the people that are using the products that are not asking for this information. And like what I mean is that things are getting kind of scary. So you will probably remember way back with Half-Life 2 and the source leak from Outlook Express, where a computer was compromised because Outlook Express, in all of its brilliance, just executes code when you touch it. And now Google wants to push forward websites being able to launch native code. So that is very scary for a variety of reasons. But with all these programs that already just outright log everything you put in, you have a lot of issues. So I'm sure I mentioned this before, but recently here in Canada, we had a very, I guess not really popular enough, but a popular outlet for buying computer hardware called NCIX. And NCIX went belly up. They went bankrupt. And what happens is the CEO was a network manager. He knew everything he needed to know about security to make a stable infrastructure for his company. So what happens? The landlord sells all of the server hardware, the actual physical hardware, the disks and everything related, to a Chinaman in Vancouver. And now the Chinaman has access to all the records from when the company was first made, of all the employees, all the consumers, in plain text. I'm not just talking about like passwords and stuff like that. I mean, their credit card numbers and personal information that can easily lead to identity theft. If you were an employee at NCIX, you are now in the deepest fucking shit imaginable because by the time this was actually discovered, he had already sold the data to multiple individuals, many of which were in China. And the individual who discovered it as a part of that AdFly, or no, not AdFly, Privacy Fly. I can't remember. I'm sure I linked it before, anyways. But he found it on Craigslist. There was just a list on Craigslist offering to sell the hardware from NCIX, and he asked the guy, and he said, "Hey, is the data still in the hardware?" And he said, "Yep." And he went over and verified it, and then eventually it led to the cops being tipped off. And unfortunately, I've not heard a follow up from that. But I was actually one of the people affected by that because I was a consumer at NCIX. So although I had shopped at NCX only like a year or 2 or 3 after that, or before that, all of my information was compromised. My credit card number, my passwords, any other information they may have had or otherwise mined from me, such as, for example, my name, address, phone number, stuff like that, was all compromised because it was all stored in plain text. And this individual, the CEO, who absolutely knew his shit when it came to security, intentionally, maliciously chose not to encrypt any of this data. And then it just got handed off to the landlord who held the warehouse, who then got handed off to this Chinaman, who was now selling it to everybody who wanted it. Everything. Just like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people's information. Enough to commit identity fraud, enough to use their credit cards at a whim, all this shit. All this shit was plain text. A similar event happened to a hotel chain in the US, I believe. I don't know the details about that, unfortunately. But a lot of employees had similar information leaked as well. So that's enough information, like your social insurance number, everything related. You can easily commit identity theft with that. These
Yeah, there's
companies,
shit like that too with there's this Ashley Madison site. You might have been familiar with this. It's a
I
website
think I've heard about
entirely
this one.
designed around having an affair for married
Yeah,
couples.
I remember this. That
And
information got leaked too, didn't
yes, but it was like the names, the addresses, the credit cards. So you could not. I mean, not only is that a risk for that, but like
it? Yeah.
you know people's spouses were searching that shit up, hoping to
Yeah.
find some matches, so they could have one more thing to complain about. Then
Yeah, like it's not just that the companies are data mining you and have all this information and are retaining it for whatever reason. It's that even if they, for whatever stroke hope of God are not going to maliciously use it, that information isn't fucking secure whatsoever. You can't trust them to be secure. It's not a matter of them knowing, how to be secure. It's you are literally placing your faith in people who have no reason to be loyal to you whatsoever. So, as a result, a company that I thought, and I had no reason to believe otherwise, was a good company. They gave me great deals. They were the best deals in Canada. I got a lot of great hardware off of them over many years. I felt they were trustworthy. They turned around and just handed off all my fucking information to fucking, Nihaos in China, East India. Anyone who wanted it now has it. So I had to get a new credit card and change all this information and make doubly fucking sure that they can't, just fucking destroy what little bit of debt that they could put me into before my bank account shut them out. Because it is just absolutely insane. Like, it's always a risk no matter what you do whenever you put information on the internet. You're never going to be 100% secure because you have to go through an ISP and you can't trust the ISP. There's a lot of ISPs. I was trying to research some SSL errors I got on my grandmother's computer, trying to get some shit for her. And the SSL errors took me to some Reddit post about India, where ISPs in India just block sites right out the blue. Vimeo, Flickr, Imager, all that shit actually just gets blocked by a lot of ISPs in India. I don't know why, but they do. But the thing is, the ISP can actually just filter them too. For example, a common practice I've heard is that ISPs will replace certain advertisements with their own. So in order for you to access the internet, you already go through a middleman who contains every single piece of data you send out. Your credit cards, your names, anything more, anything, anything more potentially threatening to your identity or your, person or whatever, sensitive any information, sensitive or otherwise, is now going through this ISP and is probably getting logged. And a lot of VPNs, people place their faith in VPNs, but you have to do your research in your VPNs because a lot of VPNs also log you. And most VPNs will yield to a search warrant and will give you all the information. Therefore, they're not secure at all. It defeats the entire purpose of having a VPN to begin with. So the reason why I get into this now is because I am actually just like disgusted by how many fucking people I've talked to who do not take information security seriously. Like, I'm not going to tell you to fucking ironclad all your windows, turn on all the lights, put on a tinfoil hat. They're always fucking watching me. But there's people who still use Facebook. There's people who still use fucking, YouTube and all this other shit. There's people who don't use uBlock Origins, people, all this shit. And then they get their ass fucked, and then they ask to get their ass fucked. And it's just like the same kind of people who just don't ask for like game developers and stuff, to be honest. There's just this distinct lack of caring, this mass lethargy amidst people. And 2018, I think, was a real big one for that, especially for me because of NCIX. Because I have never had a major security breach before. I've always been conscious about security. I've never had issues with viruses after I moved on from that ancient Windows XP computer. But then for it to suddenly turn out for HKS to send me a link and be like, hey, NCIX just had a huge data breach. And then that was like the big slap across the face of the meaty black dick. Your information's now out there. Your credit card's now out there. This is still the credit card you're using right now. You actually need to go out and physically do something about this because somebody else just fucked you over.
Well, that's what it comes down to, is like the agreement that you have as a consumer between a consumer and a whatever, whoever's providing the service. In this case, it was like a hardware company. Like, it doesn't include going back and protecting myself from identity theft that happens as a result of your negligence. Were there any lawsuits or anything like that as a result of this?
I haven't heard. If there's a class action lawsuit or anything like to come as a result of that, you can guarantee I'm going to try to get on.
Well, yeah, as you should, because that is something that directly affects you in this case. And it's just so crazy to me that these people go through this and they never once think, you know what? There's this is the last straw. I'm actually going to start to take some steps to protect myself, even though I understand you live in a world where you shouldn't have to do all this shit. People should be honest. But that's not the world you live in, right? The world you live in is one where you have got to take these steps to protect yourself. You owe it to yourself. You owe it to your family. You owe it to your security, whatever. Just so that it might seem like an inconvenience now or in the long run, but it's going to save you from serious inconvenience, in some cases life-threatening or finance-threatening inconvenience that will end up biting you in the ass invariably in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. And even if it doesn't bite you in the ass directly, by not doing this stuff, by continuing to interact with these services that are completely shitty with your information, you are facilitating in some small way the fucking of other men. And you don't want to promote gay sex, so just fix this, dude. I understand that some people need Facebook for work or feel like they need Facebook for work. Some companies do require that you do have a Facebook, though. Like, that is an area where...
Find another company.
Yeah.
It tells you all you need to know about the work ethics they have if they want you to have your data exposed to the...
Yeah, I mean, I would have to, if I was in a position like that, I would have some serious talking to with upper management, or try to at the very least. I don't know really what leverage these people have usually.
Because that's fucking insane. That is actually insane. To require you to have an account on a fucking third-party website like Facebook, regardless of security or whatever, to require you to have an account, a presence on this unrelated website is so fucking left field. Like, it makes no sense at all. Like, it's irrelevant unless you are dealing directly, unless you are a Facebook employee. And Mark Zuckerberg is like, hey, do you actually know how our service works? You need to have some kind of familiarity with our service in order to be, working in a position. Then it makes sense. That's the only time it makes sense. Any other case, it doesn't make sense.
China is sadly a glimpse beyond reality. Beyond the reality we are headed towards. That's a quote from Dynamo in the chat.
Nope. That's very, very real. Something I thought about recently is just how much people were scared of China and thought China's way of living was so alien and, so like apocalyptic because of all the closed information and the control of information. But the truth is, you've been living in that for quite some time just because of Google and the fact that Google controls so much. That's why Tencent approaching upon their market is going to be kind of interesting. Because while I really, really hope the Trump administration actually does their investigation of Google and really exposes a lot of stuff, the Trump administration is also so wildly incompetent, I doubt it's really going to accomplish anything, even if they do that. But Tencent coming at odds with Google might actually be a very interesting clash of giants because from what I understand, China is actually pretty aggressive about a lot of things. And Google is like a fucking baby boy that's just been handed success time and time and time and time again, and cried very loudly and behaved very, very terribly when it came to any kind of contest. For example, the Samsung versus Apple and the attempting to patent rounded corners. So, which I believe was actually successful.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Partially successful. So, like, that exposes the audacity of these things and the insanity of the law surrounding them. But in order to see actual change, you're going to have to see something dramatic, and I don't think you're going to see something dramatic for over 20 years. But it'll still be entertaining to watch. In a dog sitting in a burning room, this is fine, kind of.
Yeah, that's sort of the way I'm approaching this whole thing too. I can't imagine, a way where this doesn't turn out terribly for consumers, but I mean, I can imagine a way. I don't think it's likely at all for any sort of positive
What
resolution.
we need is actually a second internet. We need something completely fucking detached. We need to start over from scratch. Get away from all these corporations. Get away from all the data. We need to come up with different protocols, different system entirely. And just somehow never fall into that pitfall again. But I feel like it's just like even if that were to happen, as very unlikely as it is, it would just be a cycle that repeats itself.
Yeah, I don't have any confidence that it would actually be I mean, it would be fine for the first start, but it would just end up the same dystopic nature. I don't feel like people, even though we live in the information age where you can just literally look up any question or look at endless historical examples of certain things, like if you can test a lot of theories against our historical accounts and what we have at our disposal. What's happened in the past 200 years, and yet people are still into capital, or that's a funny Freudian slip. The people are still into communism and all this other shit, even though the I don't even need to say anything. You guys understand that one, and there's all this other shit about that, similar things that you live in. The fact that there's so much information there and people are still that ignorant, people are still that brainwashed in some cases by their college professors or whatever. Like, I don't necessarily fault the person who's been fed a bunch of lies, but at the same time, like, you owe it to yourself to educate yourself. There should be some personal responsibility there. I'm not quite at the Sam Harris level where I recognize that there is no free will. Like, I get that there's no free will and all that shit, right? But still, I feel like there should be some element of personal responsibility, and these two perspectives are very much at odds from a philosophical standpoint. So I don't really know what to say about all that, but I still think you owe it to yourself and to mankind worldwide to not be just a puppet, I guess, but
a bitch,
not be a dumb bitch.
Don't be a dumb bitch. I see you typing.
Huh.
Oh man, that was lunacy. So, what are your plans for 2019?
Well, honestly, some of the most hilarious stuff that happened this year was that drama stuff. I talked about that when you were AFK. The drama shit that was occurring, it was all like it all could have been avoided, and it probably should have been avoided, but it happened, and at the very least, we can laugh about it. That is something that is in our power to do as a community here together. And is it funny.
I want to find that PM from that guy in the Sins forum complaining to me in private about that Star Trek mod. I wasn't even a part. I gotta find that screenshot. It's gotta be somewhere, because that drama shit reminded me so much of that. It's just like some fucking like 14-year-old comes in there and just throws a fucking temper tantrum and then leaves.
Then he says bye.
Oh shit. And N got mad because he's a liberal or something, and then I don't know.
Well, the thing about I actually explained this whole thing. Yes, I explained the whole Necron thing to Patrick, and that was before I decided to get him out of the server. And what it ended up coming down to was just this guy, instead of taking any of the issues that he apparently had with me to a private message and just talking to me about it, or even being remotely respectful with the way that he brought any of these problems up. Like, I guess I can understand from his perspective that he thought I was a real insane human being or something, and maybe that I wasn't deserving of that decency. But the way that he conducted himself was basically the same thing that he was accusing me of. Is like actually unironically accusing me of being a sociopath, the same way that Vorgaz's wiki article came from. And it's just like it doesn't make any sense to me. And so I was really not sitting too well with that when he was just he then acted like
a psychopath.
I've not been fucking no, I don't think so, man. Especially the
diagnose you right here.
Oh yeah, you got the WikiHow article loaded up.
So if you sucked a fart out of a guy's butt, what would be the first thing you do with it?
Probably puke.
You're a psychopath.
Ah, shit.
It's done. It's done, boys. It's done.
I've been
Like
exposed.
my sole interaction that with Vorga or not Vorga, Necron was him complaining about the AI video and then not giving me a single reference about what was wrong. Like he just basically demonstrated he had no idea what he was talking about at all, and then just complained and complained and bitched and complained and attacked me, and then didn't actually try to be productive. And I
Well, I
mean,
mean, that's just sometimes he's I think he had like that was during a phase where he was personally affected by some sort of emotional thing. The thing is, like, I gave a shit about that guy. I don't want to make the whole thing about drama. It's just like at this stage of the game, I don't understand how you can know somebody for over a year and a half the way that him and I have. Like, we met while I was working on Inconsummate back in like mid 2017. So over yeah, almost a year and a half around the time of November when this whole thing went down, and it's just so silly to me. It's so like that's another thing that's so absurd. Like the same sort of reaction that you had with the whole the HKS moving in and then moving out 2 days later thing.
mhm.
Like it very much felt in a similar vein to me. That whole thing is very very surreal. Where just the stuff that he's like, I can take it if somebody says something that is within their character, within what I understand their character to be. At least then they're not breaking character theoretically. But when this kind of shit happens, I'm just blown away, man. I just don't get it at all. Like this comes out of left field, surprised me completely. Has seemingly has nothing to do with the person that I had been interacting with up until that point in any respect. It's like that's where I get it, where I just completely lose focus. Like I have no idea what the fuck is going on because, I don't even know where to begin at that point. Usually, I can try to reverse engineer the person's perspective from who I identified them as prior to that, from the person that I've known them before that, and yet in this case, it's like good fucking luck doing that because they're acting like somebody you've never even met, yet claiming that I don't know. Man, he also claimed a lot of really weird shit besides like all the personal attacks. And that is something that I have noticed is that if he ever does take issue with something, it seems like he rarely ever tried to be productive about the resolution of that issue.
Wasn't he an
And
alcoholic?
no, I don't think so.
Oh, I thought he said at some point he was raving drunk.
Yeah, probably at least once.
Because I was gonna say I know multiple like legit alcoholics, and alcohol does destroy your brain. Like it when you drink a lot, it changes you quite a bit, and you start to really tend to lose track of reality a lot, even after you've otherwise recovered. So I've definitely known two people who are destroyed by alcohol, and it would explain that behavior.
I don't think he's quite suffered from that much alcoholism. If there was any alcohol involved, it was probably more for a recreational thing. At least as far as I'm
That's
aware.
what a lot of people say. That's what a lot of people say.
Yes, and then they become like everybody else and die.
Yeah, pretty much. People are weird and complicated. I just assume I don't really truly know people and just go with it.
Oh yeah, I
But
forgot.
I'm not a people person either.
Dynamo also brought this up in the chat. I forgot about that. You know that CR12 guy who got called a dumb bitch by Pr0nogo?
Yes.
Well, I guess like 2 days ago he left the server after spamming. He unloaded his entire Discord screenshot folder, like secret screenshots or whatever that we had mostly already seen, and he just unloaded them all at once and then said bye and left. And so I have no idea what happened there. It's just another one biting the dust. He was too much of a dumb bitch, I guess. But then he started typing on his alternate account, and I exposed him because I guess he had 2 accounts in the server too. But this whole Discord thing is like such a psychotic.
Why? Where
thing.
do you find these fucking people?
This is the StarCraft modding community, dude.
None of these people are modders. They're just all fucking insane.
Hey, Necron's a modder. He's the only other guy
I
who
have
bothered
not
writing
seen
AI.
a single fucking thing come from Necron myself. Okay, he may have claimed to done some small things, but as far as I'm concerned, he's just nobody. He's just somebody who went in here and then just acted bitter, and then got very salty when he made fun of Undertale. And then that was, I guess, the breaking. Like from my perspective, that was his breaking point: is that you made fun of his.
Well, there's like a lot of middle things in the middle there. Like I think the thing that he took issue with, or the thing that he made it all about in November was that I was making fun of Vorgas for having dead rats. which is not even, it's like a gross oversimplification of what was happening. I didn't even know the rats were dead. I was just asking him how his rats were. And he's like, they're dead.
Rip.
So rip your rats, dude. Sorry. Undertale brings out the worst in all of us, to be fair. Yeah, exactly.
Undertale is like, I try to watch those videos as neutral as I could, but I could just feel Patrick's pain. And
Yes.
that pain was just like reminiscent of the game itself. The game is just so fucking bad. Like it is just bad. It is just, there's nothing fucking going on at any given point. I don't know what the entire fucking point of the design is, other than just rampant, incomprehensible exposition. And I mean, I guess it survives on the vein that there's actually no RPGs being made anymore, but I don't know, even like the bad translation of Final Fantasy VII felt more coherent and more well put together than that.
Listen, I'll never understand Undertale. I probably will never understand Necron either, so there's two things that go together very well.
Sounds like you need to read the Holy Bible.
Jesus, take me away.
Take the wheel, Jesus.
You know all those man, that reminds me of when I was still on Facebook, and I would just spend my day finding all of the people who were sharing Jesus and religious related images on my feed, and I would just like take their whatever image they sent and then Photoshop something about God not existing in, and then I'd be like, here's a fixed version. And so I thought that was like peak comedy back then, but now it's just funny that they interacted with me back at all, because that always did make them funny, which I guess was make them angry, which is the funny part.
So what are you going to do in 2019? Undertale 2?
Oh, I actually already did that.
Undertale 3?
Yeah, that's Life is Strange. We got to finish that. There's like a couple of productions that I have yet to finish, which are Dark Colony, an RTS that, ironically enough, Necron himself requested I do. I got to finish that. I got to finish Battlecry 2, and then I have to finish that Life is Strange game, which is Undertale 3. So those three will be done before the end of January, hopefully. At least 2 out of 3 of those will be done. And then after that, it's just Dynamo has collected a massive list of various RTS titles from far and wide. And my goal, long-term, video-wise, is to play every RTS released. And so it will be a disaster.
Good luck.
Yeah.
You should. I'll see you play a spell for us. That'll be a fucking good one.
Oh yeah, should we? Is that one we should duocast? I think more duocasts need to happen.
I'm not gonna duocast that one because it's so fucking long.
Okay.
But I will skim through your videos if you do run it.
Yeah, well, if it's classed as an RTS,
the playtime in that will be insane and painful.
I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, I think duocasts are like the thing of the future, honestly. That's like some good shit. Or more, I guess we got to find some actual co-op RTS. And nobody say Red Alert 3 or I'll end you.
Red Alert 3.
Fuck! Man, that game gives me nightmares.
That's the best game, right?
I just can't believe... Okay, so one thing I do want to do in 2019 is be a bit more focused on educational content, because that is something I feel like I slacked on this year. It's like I had the idea to start doing it like in the early stages of the year, but that's where most of the work got done, and then I just sort of slacked off the last half. But I am looking forward to hopefully having a bit more time to do that. I think that what this year was helpful for is that I realized that I was like overextending myself a lot on projects. So you'd have like a lot of like just this month alone of December, I worked on the Nova stuff with you, which was great. A lot of good stuff there. I feel like I worked on something else. I did 2 map craps, which was another thing that started this year. It was pretty funny. It was basically making Antioch level maps in 4 hours.
Oh yeah, if I had time, I was gonna do that, but it's always at like a weird hour of the day for me, and I'm usually got like other stuff I got to do, but I might end up shitting it up at some point.
Cool, dude.
You guarantee it's gonna be shitty too.
Of course, yeah. That's the running gag, is that they're all garbage. Yeah, I don't know. The thing is, like, I overextended myself a lot in the past the last quarter, probably because I was trying to make up for lost time with all the lost internet. But I think it was helpful for me to realize maybe I shouldn't be trying to do like 6 different things every day, and
Yeah.
it seems like an obvious lesson to learn, but
It's easy to get into it because
yeah.
my problem is I make progress in something and then I think it can take on, and then something will happen that'll disrupt it and the whole fucking train derails instantly.
Well, that's basically what happened with Battlecry 2 and Dark Colony, these two RTS games that I was playing, is that I was trying to restart them several times throughout like the last 2 months of the year, but I just kept getting busy with a bunch of other things that took priority for one reason or another. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean 2019 is really just going to be a year where eventually at some point we're going to have to move, I'm pretty sure, so that'll be its own fucking chronicle of insanity, but there's going to be a lot of silly stuff either way. There's going to be a lot of content. Maybe we'll unearth the sequel to Flame Knives, and I'll play that, but hopefully not. And then yeah, there'll be. I'm hoping for a lot of video productions, but mostly I'm hoping to finish this Project Hydra thing. I don't really know if I've told you about this at all in any respect, but it's like I'm actually trying to do have something of a melee mod component to it where the changes to the balance, like I'm adding new units and stuff, I'm changing a lot of the default balance, and it's going to basically be an experiment that will hopefully be foundational for when I end up making my own RTS, years into the future. That's like the end game of all this. So hopefully I can make something worthwhile with that. The goal is to at the very
Is that
least.
what those doodads are for?
Yeah, well, those are going to be used in multiple projects, but right now the first time they're going to be used for is for this, yeah, Project Hydra. So I'm starting with like the original campaigns just as a easy way to justify making large scale maps, because I'm just like remaking them all from scratch as you would expect.
Yeah.
But I think the first thing that we're really gonna have to conquer is like the melee, getting a bunch of people in for the testing once the mechanics are actually done, and figuring out like what concepts work in this kind of an RTS of this pacing and with this time to kill and all this other stuff. So like some of the concepts I have might work in a slower RTS or a faster RTS, but maybe don't work in this. I got to try to get a feel for what that's going to be.
Yeah.
So that'll be its own challenge. What are your plans for 2019?
Well, in the vain hope that we don't have some kind of disaster show up and my grandmother doesn't do anything more. I really just want to try to catch up. Well, I got two things, really two major things I want to do. I've got the video projects I want to catch up and that have piled up since like 2016 and 2015. First and foremost, in very recent times, I'm going to be pushing out another large developer video about Dungeons and Dragons for the second short adventure I ran. But there's other stuff I want to catch up for D&D as well, but it's more on the side. The World of Warcraft compilation and the Skyrim videos are the short-term stuff. But eventually I am going to finish up the Sonic 2006 videos. And then there's DMC.
I finally watched the Sonic 06 video yesterday, and holy shit, man. Like, I knew that game was fucked, but
yeah,
it's pretty good. There's some pretty good moments, man. I never noticed how fucked it was. I played it on the 360. That's how long ago I had.
Yeah.
I had entertained it.
The 360 version is actually very different. I've got a recording that someone has sent me his 360 version. I'm going to integrate into this video in the end to show some of the differences. But so the Sonic 2006 compilation, if you're not entirely sure what that is, someone that I've known for some years, she streamed it. And we watched it while she streamed it, but then she sent me the recordings afterwards. So I think there's about 50, 60 hours or so of that game. And so I'm breaking that down, not just showing how everything is wrong, but getting into observations and stuff regarding Sonic and Sega as a body. And so that's actually a very large project. I've released compilations for some years called the XXE series that focus on bugs and stuff like that. I have been building those videos since I think about 2006. When Sonic 2006 is actually finished, it'll actually be larger than the entire XXE series, both the old and the new versions. It is actually going to probably be the largest video project I've ever created. The Skyrim videos are getting similar edits as well. So I'm still not entirely sure if I'm going to try to finish that game or not. The people I've sent the videos to have told me the videos are very entertaining and they want me to continue it. but it is very, very patience testing for reasons that should be obvious when it's actually released. There is about 7 segments done for that, and I have about 1 or 2 segments left of video to actually process before I decide if I'm going to record more or not. The World of Warcraft series is also enormous. You've seen some of those as well. Those have been released sequentially, unlike my other video projects. I still have a large chunk of stuff to go through with World of Warcraft, and a new expansion was released that I may as well cover as well when I do get back to it. That was actually planned to be finished by March or May this year. It was actually intended to be finished 3/4 of a year ago. But when I started it is when the housing stuff started.
Yeah. So
So I was able to actually record intermittently throughout there, but afterwards, when summer started, I got so depressed and the heat became so unbearable, I stopped recording, but I still have a tremendous amount of stuff. I have probably processed about 150 to 200 hours worth of recordings for that game, and I'll probably have to record as much or more by the time I actually finish it.
well, that was another one where it wasn't there some sort of time sensitive element to it because of the game time that you had, like the premium
Yes,
game time.
but someone has offered to bankroll uh, finishing it. So
Okay.
at this stage, the time sensitive nature is no longer an issue. It's more like when do I actually? So beginning in January next year, I'm going to be looking to finish up Skyrim and actually start tackling Sonic 2006 and the World of Warcraft series again. But like I said, there's so many video projects that have piled up over the years. At this stage in time, I'm probably looking at about 400, 500 hours worth of recording sitting on my hard drives that need to be processed for some video project. The XXE series, there's 2 or 3 episodes of that. There's the DMC compilation. HKS streamed me that wretched game. I'm going to deal with that. There's the mucky Dark Souls 3 run. I'm going to deal with that.
I was actually about to
And then
run a Devil May Cry DMC like a while ago. Is it actually worth running, or is it just a disaster? I guess those two things aren't mutually exclusive.
it is a disaster, but you should have lots of eye cancer from it. So I recommend.
Okay.
So there's LPs and stuff. I've been shuffling things around and figuring. I'm actually going to run Seiken Densetsu 3. I'm hoping to start that in January, but it really depends on how I feel. That's a Japanese RPG. It's regarded to be one of the best RPGs ever made, although it has a difficulty curve to it. So I will probably fuck it up because I don't really play JRPGs. I don't really play anything in general. So it's going to be entertaining coming from such a very, very long dry spell and jumping into something like that. But
Are JRPGs usually more turn-based than Western counterparts? What
yes.
what so is that like one of the things that I guess like sort of like Final Fantasy VII or whatever? Like that's like the quintessential JRPG in most Westerners' minds that aren't.
A quintessential JRPG is probably more like Final Fantasy VI, more than 7.
Okay. Well, I've
7
never
was
played either of them. I'm just trying to
sort
think
of
of like the average uninitiated Westerner
yeah,
coming into the
yeah,
genre.
yeah. Sort of look at it as Final Fantasy VI. It's probably a good representation of it. Um, but this game is different. This game is more real time. So
Okay.
it is different. It will be very interesting because it's more Diablo-esque in many ways, but it's party based as well. So it actually one of the reasons I wanted to play it is because it will be an excellent referential and learning point for looking and comparing to Dragon's Dogma and Diablo in general, because it's like it's one of like the primary ancestors of those games. So it will be very interesting to look at it and compare those titles and draw conclusions from the evolution of it. But beyond video projects, I actually am planning to create a StarCraft 2 campaign. So going through Legacy of the Void showed me how easy it is to make something that's good in StarCraft 2 uh, and just avoid what Blizzard has done. But what really set it off is a long, about 2 hour or 2 year rather, a 2 year long assessment of the original Apex project, and thinking if there was some kind of alternate mechanism I could use to build it in terms of the writing, because the writing was very demanding as it was. It required a lot of things I didn't really know how to do in a scale that really wasn't prepared to do, especially given with all the real life problems that have been happening. But I ended up on the spot at one point. I ended up devising an alternative fork, a reimagination of a different area of the story that could be broken up into 5 mission segments. So I have decided I will attempt to make this. There is actually a channel on your server for it, but currently I've only posted a few things in there, and I probably won't post too much in there for a while because it is low priority. But within 2019, assuming things don't go to shit and everything turns out all right, I will more likely be able to produce at least playable prototypes for all 5 maps of the first chapter. I'm actually very close. I was very, very close to doing the first map and having it functional, but I had to focus on D&D stuff instead. So long-term goals for me are learning enough about Unreal 4 that I can attempt to make an action RPG in it, like DMC. Short-term goals are create the StarCraft 2 campaign and catch up to videos. Short-term being within 2 to 3 years. Within 2019, I would like to have all those major compilations finished. I wanted to have most of them finished by winter, but, well, things went really to shit in summer and in fall. So, but most of the major overarching work for the house has been done. All that remains to be seen is really what the landlord actually plans to do when the yearly term comes up. Everything hangs on that. It's literally a life or death situation, because if we can't sustain living here or we're forced to move, there is actually nowhere to go. And I don't have the means to survive otherwise. So I don't really plan to eke out a living on the street. I'm actually really rather tired of these circumstances. I'm tired of living under stress. I'm tired of constantly being worried all the time. My physical health is very, very bad, and I just do not want to deal with this anymore, and I'm really tired of it. So if something bad happens, then, well, it can't be helped. But if nothing bad happens, then I want to try to compensate for all the lost time. But that's kind of a mental pitfall you can fall into, because then you're going to overwork yourself, and I have done that before too. But I think that a small StarCraft 2 campaign within reason is quite possible. I think that since the mess, a large amount of data editing work has already been done for the previous project that can be recycled, and I already have a good staging platform to work from, it should hopefully be possible for me to learn enough about StarCraft 2's editor to actually get into it like I did Brood War. Obviously, my time with Brood War was very different than with StarCraft 2. With Brood War, I was the pioneer, and then I, stopped working with it in 2009 because I had reached the limit of what the game could do for me out of what I wanted out of my projects. With StarCraft 2, I'm starting over largely from scratch as far as the data editor is concerned, and it's not exactly pleasant to work with. In light of that, I've decided I will do what I did during the Project Retribution. I'm going to record all development and produce a video series for it. It'll be called the Apex Developer Series. During Retribution, I produced a 26-part developer series that's not publicly available because nobody was really interested at the time, in which I followed the development of the project from start to finish. There was some periods where I did not record, but the vast majority of it was recorded. Probably about 80% of the video is time-lapsed modeling and talking about models and dealing with them, since that was where the lion's share of the work went into with Retribution. But with Apex, I will be anytime I'm working on it, I'm going to be recording it. So as to how I plan to release those videos, I'm not really entirely sure yet. It may be something I just hold on to for when it's finished. I am going to edit them and process them, so it's more workload I have to deal with, but thankfully those are usually pretty easy to do in comparison to Sonic and other stuff, which is actually very involved. But I may or may not sequentially release them. I'm not really sure. I haven't decided yet. Like, it's something I need to decide on. But
I think developer videos like that are pretty useful for the developer themselves. Like, I'm planning on doing a sort of dev commentary for the whatever projects I end up releasing. It's not really so much that I'm recording I am in some cases live streaming the development of some of my projects, in other cases recording them locally, but not necessarily intended for public viewing. But I am going to be doing some sort of like developer thing at the end where I like a dev commentary perhaps or something like that, where I have an uncommentated playthrough of the end missions, and then like after that I've got like an audio track that you can overlay it, or just a separate video with the audio in it that talks about all of this stuff. And yeah, I don't know, there's like stuff like that. I think it's useful for a developer because it helps make sure that you are articulate with your ideas. Like you really have to know them inside and out to explain them for like an audience at the like that's coming into it with presumably not a whole lot of history with it. And being able to know them inside and out as a developer is certainly like an asset in your favor. And so I definitely want to try to do that just to see where it goes. Maybe I don't end up doing it for every project, but it's something that I want to try for, Hydra and Encantum and all these other projects that I'm working on. So I'd be interested in seeing somebody else take a crack at it, since I don't really think it's something that very many developers do, even in like the modern AAA space. Besides Life is Strange, which does have a commentary track reel. But,
since I don't plan to release the project, it is going to be basically an invite-only release. It's the developer series and a playthrough will be the only things that are ever publicly released. I will probably permit certain individuals to release their own casted recordings of it, but it will never be released to the public overall. But the developer series more than likely will be at some stage. But there's like a sort of a thought that maybe I don't want to release the developer videos until it's finished because I don't really want to spoil people on stuff. And evidently, when you're developing it, there's only so much you can hide while editing the video when you're working on like plot sensitive things. But it is more or less a gameplay centric project. I can talk about what I want to do with the gameplay and not get into the story, but
Right.
ultimately you make some concessions when you release a developer thing at any point anyways. So
Yeah.
it is a build and destroy campaign. You pretty much already know everything I wanted to do with Apex anyways. This is basically the same thing. It's just I'm not having more, like, this will be a Terran only campaign. When you start there'll be multiple factions, but it'll all be Terran, and there won't be the kind of scale to it that Apex originally planned to have. I have already done testing for the game. In fact, I believe I gave you the first video already that shows that testing and the conclusions therein.
Right.
The performance of StarCraft 2 has not improved in the many years it's been out, and I'm not going to build something I can't actually play. And my processor is from 2009, and I can't just brute force it. And even then, with StarCraft 2, it's only, your processor is only so and so available. I do have third parties who can test it for me that tell me the performance on higher powered processors. Someone did do a performance test for me using a newer Ryzen, AMD Ryzen, I believe it was, I think. And its performance was a lot better for him, but there was still periods where it tanked pretty hard. So I have to keep that in mind for myself. But it is something I will try to do, and I know it can be done. It's just a matter of having the drive to do it. So with
Yeah.
luck, 2019 will not be a total disaster, and I'll actually have time to start catching up on everything, and we'll actually see some content releases. 2018 was better than 2017. I released 3 LPs as opposed to 2. That's typically the bar I go by. But I also did release a lot of educational content. I did release a lot of those WoW videos. I put 2 things in a graveyard on Christmas Day, one of which I'll probably end up resuming or returning to in 2019, which is Divinity Original Sin 2 when we do the Enhanced Edition. And there's a lot of things that were otherwise progressed on that aren't available, but when they are available, I believe they will make up for the lost time.
Out of curiosity, what would have to happen for Brood War to become a more viable platform for you than StarCraft 2? Besides the fact that, like, we've already talked about the AI needing a bit more work and obviously the data structure, but that is all in progress. The unit limits are in progress. I guess the player limit is something that I don't really know if we have a solution to, but is there something other than that other than those
So
things?
the visuals of Brood War are not capable of doing what I want to do. I'm not capable of granulating the things I want to be able to granulate. I do not like the way the triggers in Brood War work, and I don't feel like I have the kind of fine-tuned control over the way things behave and move. Um, there is hard to really get into in passing, but with StarCraft 2, currently I'm asking how I'm going to be doing cinematics, and I'm not going to be doing very advanced cinematics, mind you, but since StarCraft 2 can't handle pre-rendered stuff, as far as I understand, the only way to do it is through play by texture and play an audio track separately, and there's a high chance of desyncing. I don't want to do it that way, so I'm going to end up doing it probably through triggers, unless the cinematics editor proves to be more functional than it was when I first used it. I'm going to actually be modeling almost all the scenes and stuff myself, probably largely from scratch. And more than likely, I'll be animating them inside 3ds Max and then exporting them as components to put together inside triggers and stuff like that. In Brood War, the alternative would be to create an SMK file using tools that won't even run in Windows 7 to begin with, and crush down to an incredibly small resolution and incredibly shitty color depth that would basically destroy everything I throw at it. And I don't think at this point in time it's possible to place cinematics in Brood War precisely when you want them to, like between specific maps. Maybe I'm wrong, but
Well, you could. It's possible to do that if you replace the existing campaign files. That's something that has its own set of hardcode that could probably be easily enough circumvented. But you like the way that Blizzard does them, you can replace those files the same way that they're in the
yeah.
stock campaign or whatever. So that is possible. But again, like actually creating something that's not crushed to fuck color wise is a more of a interesting
Plus
challenge.
the AI tuning as well is really important. Apex's AI isn't just about the general behavior of the AI, but also the tactical AI as well. And I know you were doing some basic tactical AI behavior, but a lot of those are pretty far fetched, and I need like per unit specific stuff without really getting overly complicated in terms of how it's integrated, and preferably without using workarounds all over the place. Like I feel like things like killing random units and hidden portions in the map and counting their deaths to be extremely like silly workarounds.
I mean,
I'm
you
not
can just
really.
calculate all that stuff in AI script now, but
Uh, well,
if you needed to
so
do some sort of triggered related event. But I mean, everything that you were thinking about timer wise, that can all be done through plugins, C++ wise. You could get somebody who would be interested in doing that for you.
but I don't know C++, and I do not want to involve third parties in this project,
Okay.
except for the absolute most minor things. I have had repeated burns of relying on third party individuals, from Retribution and character models to StarCraft 2 and the AI and Jade Mist Threg. I have had countless people burn me, uh, people who I've known for years, like not just randos, but people who I really thought I could depend upon, that proved to be unreliable. This is, to me, balancing the success of a project on a third party contribution is tantamount to basically forfeiting the project now. So I have absolute confidence in my trigger ability with StarCraft 2. Right now, the thing I'm most concerned about is how I'm going to deal with the data editor and how I am going to actually make the cinematics happen. So, if anything, I would like to find a consultant, someone I can ask about the data editor and learn from, but that's not like a priority right now. I'm not going to do it right now because I'm not doing it right now. But
Yeah, I can send you somebody who I know who was doing
I
that for
think
me. So
that Wuck or some other people in here, Patrick, or someone you mentioned, one or two people in the server, did StarCraft stuff to some extent. So I will worry more about that when I'm actually back into it and actually working on the data editor. For now, I was just getting my feet wet, trying to remember the stuff I learned before, working on the graphics and stuff like that. I've got those particle effects working nicely. I've got some model edits working nicely. I was hoping Taylor Mouse would get back to me about the issues I was having with the M3 importer, but he seems to have died. He did send me a new unreleased version of it, but then it still had problems, and I reported those problems, and then I haven't heard back from him. So I don't know. Maybe he's like stuck for the holidays or something. But I may just be on my own too. So it's not really too surprising. I'm not really unaccustomed to that, but
well, it
that's a
still would
more
be
scary
nice
thing.
to be able to rely on these tools and stuff. I have the same problem in Brood War, to be honest, with a lot of the tools that I'm using by third party devs, and the devs are asleep for 6 months out of the year or whatever, and then they come back and
Yeah,
you try to get as much as you can out of them while being respectful, and then they go to bed for about 6 more months.
yeah. So while on one hand, I want to create like a multi-chapter, like say like 15, 20 mission campaign, or at least like overall, will be focusing on the small pieces. My overall goal is it won't really bother me if it dies. It won't really bother me if it fails. It's mostly about I want to learn. I want to get back into the swing of things. I want to get back to being accustomed to working in graphics and particles and stuff like that, so I can transition that to Unreal 4. So working with 3D is more preferable in that regard than working with StarCraft 1. Because although the tools are different, I will still be working with 3ds Max. I still need to remember this stuff. It has been some years since I have done really heavy work in 3ds Max at all. Of course, Retribution was the biggest, with some experiments in StarCraft 2 afterwards, but and of course Carbot StarCrafts and Dwarven Comet and stuff like that. But that's all minor. That's not even remotely comparable to the work I did in Retribution. Retribution was like basically making a full game's worth of assets 3 times over. And it has been some years since I've done that, and I've forgotten most of what I learned, which wasn't very much, anyways. I have a terrible, terrible fucking learning disability. It's really, really awful. So I want to get back into that in the very, very vain hope that one day HKS is able to learn enough about Unreal 4 to give me a framework to make an ARPG with, because that will actually be incredibly difficult because we're going to need animations. And I don't know animations. Oh, I mean, I can animate a Battlecruiser, I can animate particles, I can animate guns, explosions, destruction, mechanical stuff, and things like that. But organics are that gray area.
Yeah, you
So
know
I
what
showed you
really
that
sucks
video.
is that all of my really cool concepts for sci-fi or any sort of like video game art that I've tried to conceptualize for other people to do is
Yeah.
it's all organic stuff, man, and that's the
Yeah.
hardest shit possible. Like I have ideas for like a race that's this bulbous gelatinous mass or whatever, and I have this like cool idea for like what they would do in certain animation states or whatever, and like how to make that into a gameplay read and how to characterize that through just visuals and all that other stuff without even needing any exposition. You could sort of figure out what's going on there, but it's all fucking organic. So
You better learn modeling then,
yeah.
because you're gonna need to. Because the thing is you can't trust anybody to do something. If you can't do it yourself, you're in trouble. Unless
Well,
you've got them sunk in with a contract or something equivalent like that, you're
thankfully, I've been
gonna.
very blessed with the people that I've been surrounded by, blessed by the tarot card themselves. So hopefully that doesn't end up changing. Otherwise, I will have to be looking at some real scaling back. That's for sure.
Man.
Like some of the shit that I'm trying to do, even for my brother's birthday project, involves like hydralisks teleporting behind men and saying "nothing personnel, kid," and like that stuff I wouldn't be able to do at all. That'll be entertaining. You should play that one when it's out. I don't know. You probably don't even have Brood War installed anymore, but
No, I don't.
that's a
I left behind Brood War in 2009, and I never wanted to come back because I basically worked with Brood War every single day since 1999. In 1998, when I first played it, there was a time because I didn't actually have a computer back then. But when I had it after, it was basically every day, and then I modded it from 2000 onwards nonstop. So I had had enough of Brood War by that point.
can't believe you're all Brood War out.
Yeah.
SMH.
But the pro games are still interesting. I still come back to those every now and then. I've still got the OSL Finals torrent that was on Team Liquid some years ago, and I still come back to those, especially for references in my educational videos, because Brood War Professional Gaming is really like the number one resource for game design you could possibly ask for. There is really nothing better. Just the Korean commentary and all, just watching that will teach you so fucking much.
It's definitely a look into like people, top professionals, taking everything about it seriously, which is very interesting because even in other esports, you don't really get that same. I mean, maybe they are taking it as absolutely seriously, but for whatever reason, be it the game or the players themselves, it never really gets to that same level. I feel like they never really have the same. I guess they just don't have to sacrifice as much to be number one. Not that they don't sacrifice a lot, but they just don't have to in games that aren't Brood War because Brood War is just that.
Well, the games
insane.
are all easier than Brood War. That's the
Yeah.
plain and simple truth. They're all easier, and the culture is different as a result. But they're all easy. You'll never find a game as skill testing as Brood War again. I don't think. I think the closest you could have gotten is like like Quake 3 and Unreal Tournament 99 and like shooters like that. But
Yeah, CS 1.3
the vast
or
majority of
something.
stuff, especially anything team based, will never be comparable.
Well, it's a very different set of skills for sure dealing with your team. Yeah. But yeah, it's
team based games are interesting for other ways. They're interesting for
it's a different kind of
how
story.
people's psychology interacts.
Yeah.
Because the thing that was interesting about League professional play to me was how people would synergize a lot, and then the times where they didn't synergize, like you could always tell, even in like the teams with like Faker in them, like the top winning Korean teams or whatever, you could always tell there was some discord between what people wanted to do at some points, and then when the teams entered it was more important when they were like on the back foot, because League, once you hit that point, once you get a snowball, it's basically impossible to lose as long as you play the game right. So if a team gets like an early advantage, and that's usually going to lose. But sometimes you see when teams are on the back foot, the way they play and the way they synergize their play can be really interesting to see how they try to take back advantages. Unfortunately, that was really only the case in early League of Legends, because as time has gone on, Riot has just put in more and more snowballing shit, like especially with like the dragon buffs and stuff like that, really punish you very, very hard for losing anything. And like the Baron changes and stuff like that basically make it impossible to take back the game at a high level. But there is a rare case where you're going to see a team on the back foot actually do really wacky things in the way all the players synergize. Like it tells you the strength of their ability to trust people who are calling the shots and things like that, and to play under pressure, because it is most certainly a different set of skills. The game itself is very easy, but playing with people is definitely not very easy. And you could tell that's one of the main reasons why the American scene was so weak, is because the volatility of team rosters, how people are just getting traded like every month or two back and forth over and over and over and over and over again. That volatility makes it so hard to integrate. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of teams just really floundered.
It is pretty
is
crazy.
interesting to see that stuff.
Like the thing I like about the Counter-Strike professional scene is that they like it is more of a mechanically skill testing and certainly a more consistent game than any MOBA you're going to find, just because CS hasn't actually changed that much balance-wise since CS:GO came out, even though they added all those really silly guns. But you look at like the way that people are playing, the way that they're evolving it is very similar to like niche strats on certain maps in Brood War, because they have the different maps as well, which is something I wish more MOBAs played around with. But
yeah.
At the same time, Overweight played around with multiple maps or multiple game modes or whatever, and it went too far the gimmick route where everything is different. Like you're playing a fundamentally different game.
Well, it showed you that Blizzard doesn't know how to make maps. The thing about maps and what makes Brood War really unique, and probably Counter-Strike as well. I don't know about their mapping scene, but most of Brood War's maps were user made. And then they went through some kind of channel to actually be approved by tournaments, and they usually receive some changes. The problem with Overweight is it's only Blizzard making the maps, and Blizzard has demonstrated time and time and time again they don't know map design at all. And since they're the only ones verifying them, and they're the only ones doing the pass on them, and they're the only ones balancing them, you get very stagnant very quickly, and that's definitely an issue with Overweight, having actually played it myself. Even at a casual level, it's very stagnant and very, very unbalanced. But Brood War had a lot of weird maps get passed through, and then they get verified, and then they actually reach the tournaments. Like I forget the name of them because there's been so many years, but there was a map that actually favored carrier rushes and weird shit like that.
That's pretty
because
crazy.
Most of it was blocked off by eggs. It was like an island map that was made islands by eggs. So is this if you had destructible cocks everywhere in StarCraft 2, except like air units were actually really good.
Right.
And it led to a lot of very bizarre changes. So I don't know if Counter-Strike is the same way, but
well, I mean, there's like certain guns that are only viable or significantly more viable in certain positions of certain maps, like the shotguns, for example. Like there's a map called Nuke where there's like a hut area and there's all these close quarters and stuff. And like I guess the new trend is to have a lot of rooms on every map that allow for every gun, but that's a really stupid trend, I think. Like that's what some leading community level designers are saying, like, oh, you got to make sure that there's some room where the op isn't the best gun. It's like, I don't know why. The op is like the most fun gun, the most skill testing gun in there besides like the AK or whatever. Like you have like these guns that are adept at taking long range fights if you're good at the game. Well, I don't know why you would want to minimize that, but they do. And so you have stuff like that, but there's also the idea for just various strategies that only work, and they have all of these lineups for smoke grenades or whatever. I don't really know what a corollary would be like that in Brood War. It's like, you know, a strategy that I guess it would be like a fundamental scouting path difference or something, or like there is that drone drills and stuff like that. There's like certain things that are high risk or certainly low percentage. Are like, you know, there's like certain strategies that are like that in CS:GO too, where, you know, a team will stack on a certain site hoping that the terrorists come to that site instead of the other, and it's because they've got like a low econ, so if they just get traded like normal, they're going to be at a gun disadvantage and probably lose the round. But if the terrorists come there, like, you know, that's where you get into also the team's environment where you've got, you know, one member of the team, the in-game leader of the counter-terrorists are like, I think I've got a read, they're going to go this site, so let's go there. And if he's right, then he looks like a genius. And if he's wrong, then he looks like a complete idiot. But so there is some certain things that are like situational. And then there's certain things that are like global strategies. And, you know, I think the consistency across all maps by which you're still playing Counter-Strike, at least that version of Counter-Strike, is good. It's the same way that Brood War is still operating by the same mechanics, even if you have some maps that are a bit more gimmicky than others in the way that they have the eggs everywhere. There is also an island map in Brood War that was made not so long ago that actually favors Zerg, or not favors Zerg, but allows for Zerg to play. Whereas previously, I guess they had some really big issue with island maps, probably because they needed more gas investment to get transports or something.
Yeah.
But and I guess maybe it took longer than the other races as well, because you only need the 200 gas for a robo facility, or the, I guess it's like 250 gas for a starport with a control tower when you also factor in the factory. So it's like 300, 350 gas for those, and then it's like a 100, and then three. Well, no, I guess it's probably the same
also
thing.
need to get speed too, so they need both speed and transport.
Oh, right, yeah, that was the thing. So like that was a big issue. But so the way that they solved this is that obviously Terran can also just lift off, but most people just solve that by putting like a single mineral field in the middle of the expansion that has 0 minerals, so that the command center can't land there. And then you need to put a worker over there to mine it out. But this island map did something where it actually, not only was it viable for Zerg to play, but the preferred strategy for a lot of people was to go Devourers, which is like a very niche unit otherwise. And I guess it was just because of air dominance or whatever. But it's interesting that that was like a 2018 map, a map released this year and injected into the pool. So it's cool to see that, even though Blizzard's not making balance changes, although we can't rely on that per se.
It's largely because of that.
Yeah, I think it's the fact that the strategies have to evolve based on not only the maps that are coming out and added to the pool, but also the fact that people are going to be playing the same races with the same units with unchanged everything, and the only thing that changes are maps, and you got to figure out how to beat the enemy. Some of these maps are like Fighting Spirit that have been around for like 10 years or 20 years or whatever, so like they're not changing. So these are figured out battlegrounds where they're not receiving balance updates or whatever. They just are what they are. As long as they're in the competitive map pool, you got to deal with them. Like that I think is really cool, because it does become a bit more about like the drama between two players, how they are countering them. They're working against themselves, truly against themselves, not against the game or against the map or whatever, which is one of the things that I think makes Brood War esports way more compelling than something like League of Legends, where a player who's really good at tanks or really good at fighters or really good at whatever is now like gutted because of a balance update, and their entire champ pool is gone, and they've got to spend like the next 3 months relearning and being a shit player until their value goes back up because they relearned it, or they find out they can't adapt.
League has like got that fucking Relic / Blizzard problem where, there is a hole in the wall. Just fucking plow down the whole wall and make a new one.
Yeah,
Like,
StarCraft 2 is like
just,
that now too. They're just changing the entire game every 3 months or whatever.
It's been like that for a while now, ever since it came out. Blizzard just doesn't know how to balance. World of Warcraft's been like that too since release. They just, rather than fix one problem and leave everyone happy, they just try to redo everything. And it's obviously a lot of time and energy that just gets thrown out, not just because they're throwing out all the old work and everything that was invested into it to begin with, but they're also, throwing in a whole bunch of unnecessary work. Like some of the classes in World of Warcraft were pretty much fine. Just, they might have like a couple of weak skills or some builds or stuff and aren't really viable. So their idea is just to redo fucking everything. And then they just unbalance everything even further. They have no idea what the fuck they're doing. And they disrupt the playstyles of everybody that was enjoying what they were doing. They don't really fix the issues that people had issues with it. They just throw them something entirely new. And StarCraft 2 is just basically this. Like, Relic was really bad for that with Dawn of War. We just fucking... They eventually decided that they wanted to just hard cap every single unit, so you could only build a handful of every single unit, so you always had the same army composition. That was their way of balancing the game.
Yeah, and, that's such an ass backwards way.
I feel like Blizzard is eventually going to do that.
Anytime you're interfering with the way that your core resource mechanics or anything like that are interacting, and it's part of the melee. Like, it's one thing to make a shitty gimmick campaign map, but to force that upon the melee as like a design trend is so crazy to me. Yeah, you can only have 3 of this unit. Like, that's how goofy the mothership is. If there's a unit in the game, I should be able to build as many of it as I'm capable of before getting killed or winning.
Nope.
But no, you gotta Browder.
It's silly. It just shows that the designers just don't know what the fuck they're doing.
I just don't understand how that's a satisfying, like, forget whether or not it's like an objectively efficient way to balance your game or something, but think about like how is that satisfying to anybody who's playing this? Like,
Well, I just assume as it comes to result is the fact that developers maybe like played the game once and they got cheesed by something and they didn't like it, so they like act out of spite,
yeah, Blizzard and Riot
and
are
they
both
only
pretty
want the
bad for
one way to
that.
be viable. Blizzard is horrible for that. Blizzard has this long history all the way back into fucking Diablo 2 that they don't want people playing in ways other than they approve, and they will go out of their way to change that.
That is so fucking ass
They are
backwards to
very,
me.
very, very spiteful.
The thing is, as a developer, I can sympathize with somebody who is, watching a stream or a recording or something of a player taking this strategy that the developer themselves, have never considered viable, never thought of at all, and they use this strategy and they break part of the game, or they find something that's broken or whatever. Like as in a melee context, this would be like significantly over 50% win rate or something like that. And the thing is, with Brood War, we never had any answer to that, and eventually, right, the game was well balanced enough to begin with that anything that would be a significantly over 50% win rate was balanced out by maps, or it was balanced out by just a meta response from the other races. And so there are still ways around that without necessarily changing the balance of the game. And especially if it's in a situation where like, it's not the early stages of the game where you're rebalancing the spawning pool to be 200 minerals because 4 pool is too strong, or scouts to be 275 because you just wanted to edit scouts because you thought it was a funny unit, haha, and nobody still uses them. Like, it's not like this is the early stages of the game's lifespan with these other games like StarCraft 2. You're changing it for the sake of changing it. You're not changing it because you think it's going to be a better game, or that it's going to fix some balance issues or some bugs or something like that. I mean, even think of all the bugs that turned into features in Brood War. Like, not necessarily every game needs to follow suit in that respect, but still, like, you got to think about what that means, what kind of response that is. And unfortunately, it's not because Blizzard was prescient in any way. It's not because they realized this is actually going to lead to a better competitive scene, a more vibrant competitive scene, one where it's really about players adapting to one another's strategies and not about players adapting to us changing the fucking game every 5 months. They didn't do that because of that. They didn't do it deliberately. They just accidentally stumbled into the best fucking game ever made. It's really depressing, honestly, that's how it happened.
Reality is always stranger than fiction.
Yeah. Well, we've been chatting for about 3 hours and 40 minutes.
So yeah, and I've got a 6-hour D&D video I've got to cast too. So
wow, you're being
actually
be in that chair
close
for a
to
while.
7 hours. I'm sorry.
Is there anything that you wanted to end on as far as notes? We've covered a wide swath of things. We've talked about 2018. We talked about 2019 and some ideal plans for that. And we've talked about a bunch of other silly shit in the middle.
I think that's pretty good. I'll just end it on happy birthday, Necron.
Happy birthday, you fucking cute little homosexual.